When Vanessa Carter's $200,000 luxury sedan died on a frozen Chicago highway at 7:43 a.m., she had exactly 17 minutes to save her entire career. The billionaire executive was about to present the technology that would revolutionize the electric vehicle industry. But first, she needed a miracle. What she got instead was a quiet stranger in a beaten pickup truck who fixed her car with hands that moved like they'd built entire engines from memory. She didn't bother learning his name. She never imagined he'd already changed the automotive world once before, or that one day he'd change hers forever. If you want to see how a single act of kindness on a frozen highway becomes the most unexpected love story you'll hear this year, stay with me until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The temperature outside read -4 degrees Fahrenheit, but inside Vanessa Carter's BMW, the cold felt personal. The dashboard had gone completely dark 3 minutes ago, every warning light flashing once before the entire electrical system surrendered. Now the luxury sedan sat dead on the shoulder of Interstate 90, hazard lights blinking weakly as morning traffic screamed past at 70 miles per hour. Vanessa gripped her phone so hard her knuckles went white. The screen showed 7:46 a.m. Her presentation to the board of directors started at 8:15. The downtown office was still 12 miles away. "Come on," she whispered, turning the key again. The engine didn't even try. Just a pathetic clicking sound that made her want to scream. She'd spent 6 months preparing for this morning. 6 months of 18-hour days, missed meals, and canceled plans. Her entire team had worked through holidays to develop the battery technology that would finally make Titan Core Industries competitive in the EV market. The prototype sitting in the lab represented $200 million in research and the potential to secure partnerships worth 3 times that amount. And she was going to miss it because her supposedly perfect German engineering couldn't handle a Chicago winter. Vanessa jabbed at her phone, pulling up her assistant's number. Rachel answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're in the building," Rachel said immediately. "My car died. I'm on 90, somewhere past the Harlem exit." "Jesus, Vanessa." "Okay, let me call a car service." "There's no time. Even if they left right now, they wouldn't get here before—" Vanessa stopped, watching an old pickup truck slow down and pull onto the shoulder about 50 feet ahead of her. The truck looked like it had survived at least 2 decades and possibly a small war. Rust bloomed across the wheel wells, and the tailgate was held on with what appeared to be wire. "Someone just stopped," Vanessa said. "Do not get out of that car," Rachel said sharply. "I'm calling. I don't have a choice." Vanessa ended the call before Rachel could argue. She watched a man climb out of the pickup. He wore a thick canvas jacket that had seen better years, work boots caked with old mud, and a baseball cap pulled low against the wind. He walked toward her car with the careful deliberation of someone who'd spent too much time on highways and knew exactly how fast traffic moved. Vanessa cracked her window 2 inches. The cold hit her face like a slap. "Having trouble?" the man called over the wind. Up close, she could see he was maybe 30, with dark hair curling out from under his cap, and a face that suggested chronic exhaustion. His hands were scarred and rough, the hands of someone who worked with them constantly. "It just died," Vanessa said. "Everything shut down at once." He nodded slowly, like this confirmed something he'd already suspected. "You mind popping the hood?" "I saw skishatpati eat." Vanessa hesitated. Every safety seminar she'd ever attended said, "Don't let strangers near your car. Don't accept help from people you don't know. Don't trust anyone on the side of the highway." But the clock on her phone now read 7:49, and downtown Chicago wasn't getting any closer. She pulled the hood release. The man walked to the front of the BMW, lifting the hood with the ease of someone who'd done this exact motion 10,000 times. Vanessa watched him lean over the engine bay, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. She should stay in the car. That was the smart thing. But the smart thing wasn't going to save her presentation. Vanessa grabbed her coat from the passenger seat and stepped outside. The wind cut through her immediately, brutal and unforgiving. She'd worn her good suit today, the navy Armani that made her look like she could buy and sell entire companies, which she technically could. But the suit had been designed for boardrooms, not frozen highways, and within seconds her fingers felt numb. "Do you know what's wrong?" she asked, walking around to the front. The man glanced at her, taking in the designer coat and the obvious panic in her voice. Something shifted in his expression. Not pity exactly, but recognition, like he knew what desperation looked like. Could be a few things, he said, turning back to the engine. When did the lights start flickering? They didn't flicker. Everything just died. All at once? Yes, He made a thoughtful sound and reached into the engine bay with both hands. His movements were precise, confident, not like a mechanic following a checklist, but like someone reading a language they'd spoken fluently their entire life. You got somewhere important to be, he said. It wasn't a question. The most important meeting of my career starts in 26 minutes. Downtown, Michigan Avenue. He whistled softly. You're not making that. I have to. Vanessa heard the edge in her own voice, too sharp, too desperate. She forced herself to breathe. I'm the only one who can present this technology. If I'm not there, 6 months of work disappears. The man was quiet for a moment, his hands moving deeper into the engine compartment. Then he said, What kind of technology? The question caught her off guard. Battery systems for electric vehicles. You work for Titan Core? Oh. Now Vanessa looked at him more carefully. How did you know that? Saw the news about your new facility opening last month. They said you were bringing in someone to run the EV division. He glanced at her again, and this time there was something different in his eyes. That you? Yes. He nodded and went back to work. Vanessa watched his hands move through the engine bay with a familiarity that didn't match his appearance. This wasn't how mechanics worked. This was how engineers worked, people who understood systems instead of just fixing parts. Your battery management computer's fried, he said after another minute. Probably a voltage spike when you started the car this morning. Whole electrical system locked up trying to protect itself. Can you fix it, Matt? Not permanently, but I can bypass enough of the safety protocols to get the engine running. You'll make it downtown, but you'll need to take it to a dealer after. How long will that take? He pulled his phone from his pocket, checked the time, and did some mental math. 8 minutes. Maybe 9. Vanessa's heart lurched. That would get her downtown by 8:10. She'd have to run from the parking garage. Wouldn't have time to check her notes or calm her nerves, but she'd be there. Please, she said. The man was already moving. He pulled a small toolkit from his jacket pocket. Not a professional mechanic's set, just a worn leather pouch with maybe 6 tools inside. But his hands moved with absolute certainty, disconnecting wires, rerouting connections, making adjustments that looked both simple and impossibly complex. Vanessa stood there uselessly, watching him work. The wind kept hitting her face, and her feet were starting to go numb, but she couldn't look away. There was something almost hypnotic about the way he moved. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just quiet competence. You do this professionally? She asked. Not anymore. But you used to. He didn't answer, too focused on something deep in the wiring harness. His fingers worked with the kind of precision that only came from years of practice. What's your name? Vanessa asked. Nathan? I'm Vanessa. I know. He gestured toward the hood with his chin. Says your name right there on the registration sticker. Of course it did. Vanessa felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the cold. She was used to people knowing her name before she introduced herself. Used to walking into rooms where everyone had already researched her, formed opinions, decided whether she was friend or obstacle. But standing on a frozen highway at 7:53 in the morning, she wasn't a billionaire or an executive. She was just another person having the worst morning of her life. Almost there, Nathan said quietly. Vanessa checked her phone again. 7:54. If he finished in the next 3 minutes, if traffic cooperated, if every light turned green, try starting it now, Nathan said, stepping back. Vanessa practically ran to the driver's seat. She turned the key, holding her breath. The engine caught immediately, rough at first, then settling into a steady idle. The dashboard flickered, stabilized, showed her every gauge she'd been staring at in despair 6 minutes ago. Oh, thank God, she breathed. Nathan closed the hood and walked to her window. It's going to run rough, and you'll probably get a bunch of warning lights. Ignore them. Just drive straight downtown and don't turn the engine off until you're parked. After your meeting, get it towed to a dealer. How much do I owe you? He shook his head. Nothing. I can't just... You saved my entire career. Let me pay you. I stopped because you needed help. That's not something you pay for. He started walking back toward his truck. Vanessa looked at the clock. 7:56. She needed to leave right now, but something made her hesitate. This man had just performed a minor miracle with 6 tools in 8 minutes, and she didn't even know his last name. She grabbed the breakfast sandwich she'd picked up that morning, still untouched, wrapped in paper on the passenger seat, and jumped out of the car. "Wait," she called. Nathan turned around. Vanessa held out the sandwich. "It's turkey and Swiss, still warm." He looked at the sandwich like she'd offered him something infinitely more valuable than it was. Then, slowly, he took it. "Thanks," he said quietly. Vanessa pulled a business card from her pocket and pressed it into his other hand. "Call me. Please. I want to repay you properly." Nathan glanced at the card, then nodded once. Vanessa wasn't sure if that meant he'd call or if he was just being polite. She ran back to her car, jumped inside, and pulled into traffic without looking back. Vanessa made it to the office at 8:09. She sprinted from the parking garage to the elevator, rode it up 43 floors with her heart hammering, and burst into the conference room at exactly 8:14. Every member of the board turned to look at her. "Ms. Carter," said Richard Morrison, the chairman. "We were beginning to worry." Vanessa forced herself to smile, to look calm and collected instead of like she'd just survived a disaster. "Car trouble. I apologize for cutting it so close." She set up her presentation with hands that were still shaking slightly, pulled her notes from her bag, and took a breath. Then she started talking. The next 90 minutes proved why she'd spent 6 months obsessing over every detail. The battery technology her team had developed wasn't just competitive, it was revolutionary. Higher energy density, faster charging times, and a thermal management system that solved the degradation problems plaguing every other EV manufacturer. Vanessa walked the board through the data, the projected costs, the market analysis. She answered every question with precision and confidence. By the time she finished, Richard Morrison was smiling. "Ms. Carter, I think I speak for the entire board when I say this is exactly what Titan Core needed. You have our full support to move forward." Vanessa felt relief crash through her so strongly she almost sat down. Instead, she nodded, thanked the board, and gathered her materials with as much professionalism as she could manage. Rachel found her in the hallway 5 minutes later. "How did it go?" Rachel asked, clutching her tablet like a shield. "We got approval for everything. Full production funding, expanded team, priority access to the new facility." "Oh, thank God." Rachel sagged against the wall. "I was so sure. When you called from the highway, I thought..." "I know." Vanessa leaned next to her, suddenly exhausted. "Some guy stopped and fixed my car. I don't think I've ever been that grateful to another human being." "Did you get his information? We should send him something, a gift card at least." Vanessa remembered Nathan's face when she'd tried to pay him. The quiet refusal. "I gave him my card. If he calls, I'll figure something out." But as the day went on, through meetings with her team, calls with suppliers, emails from board members congratulating her on the presentation, Vanessa found herself thinking less about her success and more about the man on the highway. Nathan, who'd fixed her car with tools that barely qualified as a kit, who'd moved through her engine bay like he was reading a book he'd written himself, who'd refused payment like money was offensive. She tried to push the thoughts away. She had too much work to do, too many things demanding her attention. But late that night, sitting in her penthouse apartment overlooking the Chicago skyline, Vanessa caught herself checking her phone. No missed calls, no new messages. Nathan hadn't called, and she realized, with surprise, that she wanted him to. 3 days passed. Vanessa threw herself into work the way she always did. 18-hour days, meetings stacked so tightly, she ate lunch during conference calls. Nights spent reviewing technical specifications until her eyes burned. The board's approval had accelerated every timeline, which meant her team was now racing to prepare for full-scale production. She told herself she didn't have time to think about Nathan, told herself it didn't matter whether he called. He'd helped a stranger on the highway. That was the end of the story. But on the 4th day, her phone rang during a meeting about supply chain logistics. Unknown number, Chicago area code. Vanessa stepped out of the conference room to answer. "This is Vanessa Carter." Hi. The voice was quiet, a little uncertain. This is Nathan, from the highway. I don't know if you remember. Of course I remember. Vanessa realized she was smiling. How are you? I'm good. Listen, I just wanted to say thank you for the sandwich. Vanessa blinked. You're thanking me? Nathan, you saved my entire career. That sandwich was my first real meal in 2 days, he said simply. So, yeah, thank you, see. The words hit Vanessa harder than they should have. First meal in 2 days. She thought about her apartment, her refrigerator stocked with organic groceries she barely had time to eat. The restaurants on speed dial for when she was too busy to cook. She thought about taking food for granted her entire life. Have you eaten today? She asked before she could stop herself. Nathan was quiet for a moment. I've got some things at home. I'm fine. What? Let me buy you dinner, please. It's the least I can do. You don't have to. I want to, Vanessa said, and she realized it was true. She wanted to have dinner with this man, wanted to understand why he'd refused payment, why he'd looked at her sandwich like it was treasure, why someone with his obvious skills was working out of a beaten pickup truck. Nathan hesitated. Then he said, okay. What? They met at a diner on the south side. Vanessa almost suggested somewhere nicer. She knew a dozen excellent restaurants, places with wine lists and tasting menus and reservation lists that stretched for months. But something told her Nathan wouldn't be comfortable there. The diner was warm and loud, the kind of place that had been serving the same menu since 1987 and saw no reason to change. Vanessa arrived first, sliding into a booth by the window. She'd changed out of her work clothes into jeans and a sweater, trying to look less like a billionaire executive and more like a normal person. Nathan walked in 10 minutes later. He'd cleaned up since the highway, fresh jacket, hair combed, face shaved, but he still carried that air of exhaustion, like sleep was something that happened to other people. He spotted her and walked over, sliding into the opposite side of the booth with the careful movements of someone always aware of the space they took up. Thanks for meeting me, Vanessa said. Thanks for the invitation. Nathan picked up the menu, studied it for maybe 3 seconds, then set it down. The server came by and he ordered coffee and a burger. Vanessa ordered the same. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Vanessa wasn't used to this, wasn't used to awkward silences or uncertainty. She ran meetings, commanded boardrooms, negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But sitting across from Nathan in a South Side diner, she didn't know what to say. How did the presentation go? Nathan asked finally. Better than I had any right to hope. We got approval for everything. That's good. What you're working on, the battery technology, it sounds important. It could change the industry, if we can scale production and hit our cost targets. Vanessa caught herself slipping into business mode and forced herself to stop. Sorry, I spend all day talking about work. You don't need to hear this. I don't mind. The server brought their coffee. Vanessa wrapped her hands around the mug, grateful for something to do. Can I ask you something? She said. Nathan nodded. How did you learn to fix cars like that? What you did on the highway, that wasn't just changing oil or replacing parts. You understood the whole system. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, staring at his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I used to be an engineer, automotive systems. Worked overseas for a few years on hybrid technology. Vanessa felt everything click into place. The way he'd moved through her engine bay, the precision, the confidence. Why did you stop? Life changed. Priorities changed. Nathan's face had gone carefully neutral. The expression of someone who'd learned to deflect questions they didn't want to answer. Vanessa recognized that look. She'd worn it herself often enough. So she changed the subject, asked him about Chicago, about the neighborhoods he liked, about anything that wasn't the obvious painful thing he didn't want to discuss. The burgers arrived. Nathan ate like someone who never quite trusted when the next meal would come. Not frantically, but with focus. Like food was too valuable to waste attention. Vanessa found herself watching him, trying to reconcile the brilliant engineer who'd worked overseas with the exhausted man eating a diner burger, trying to understand what had happened to bridge those two versions of the same person. Can I ask you something now? Nathan said. Of course. Why did you really invite me to dinner? I fixed your car. You gave me a sandwich. We're even. Vanessa set down her burger, thinking about how to answer honestly. Because I spent 3 days wondering about you. Wondering why someone with your skills was working out of a pickup truck. Wondering why you wouldn't take payment. Wondering why a turkey sandwich meant so much. And now that you know? Now I have more questions than I started with. Nathan almost smiled. Almost. That sounds about right. They talked for another hour. Vanessa learned that Nathan had a daughter, 8 years old, named Mia. She learned he lived in a small apartment near Bridgeport, that he did occasional mechanic work for neighbors, that he spent most of his time making sure his daughter had everything she needed. What she didn't learn was what had happened to bring him from overseas engineering work to highway repairs. What she didn't learn was where Mia's mother was. What she didn't learn was why Nathan looked so tired all the time, but she learned enough to know she wanted to see him again. When the check came, Vanessa grabbed it immediately. Nathan started to protest, then seemed to realize how pointless that would be. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you for calling. I was starting to think you wouldn't. I almost didn't." "Why did you?" Nathan looked at her across the table. "Because you gave me a sandwich when you were about to lose everything that mattered to you. That's not something people do. I wanted to know why." Vanessa felt something shift in her chest. Maybe I'm not as selfish as I look. Nobody's as selfish as they look. They walked out together into the Chicago night. The temperature had dropped again, winter refusing to loosen its grip. Nathan's truck sat in the parking lot, still rusty, still held together with wire and determination. "Can I ask you one more thing?" Vanessa said. "Sure." "Would you be willing to look at something for me at my office? It's an engineering problem my team can't solve, and I think—" She paused. This was crazy. She'd known this man for 1 week total. "I think you might see something they're missing." Nathan studied her face. "This is about the battery technology?" "Yes. I've been out of the industry for 3 years. Whatever I knew is probably outdated." "I don't think that's true. Will you at least look?" He was quiet for so long Vanessa thought he'd say no. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll look." Vanessa felt relief and excitement tangle together. "Are you free tomorrow?" "I have to pick up my daughter from school at 3. Come by at 10. I'll make sure you're out by 2. Nathan agreed. They exchanged numbers and he climbed into his truck. Vanessa watched him drive away, then walked to her own car. Now repaired properly by the dealer, every warning light cleared. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the engine, thinking about the conversation. About Nathan's careful words and practiced deflections. About the daughter he'd mentioned exactly once, like he was protecting her even in casual conversation. Vanessa pulled out her phone and opened a private search window. She typed, "Nathan Reed Automotive Engineer Hybrid Technology," and hit enter. The results loaded immediately. Patents, articles, industry awards. Nathan Reed had more than worked on hybrid technology. He'd revolutionized it. Between 2018 and 2021, he'd held leadership positions at 3 different companies, all in Southeast Asia. His designs had improved efficiency by margins that seemed impossible. Industry publications had called him one of the most innovative engineers of his generation. Then in late 2021, he'd vanished. No new patents, no new articles, no interviews. It was like he'd simply stopped existing. Vanessa kept reading, going deeper into the search results. Finally, buried in a technology blog from 2022, she found a brief mention. Nathan Reed's absence from the industry continues to be felt. Sources say he returned to the U.S. for family reasons and has not pursued new projects. Family reasons. Vanessa closed the search window and started her car. She didn't need to know everything right now, didn't need to push or pry. Nathan would tell her when he was ready. But as she drove back to her apartment, back to her penthouse view, and her empty rooms, Vanessa Carter realized something that should have worried her but didn't. She wanted to help him, wanted to understand what had happened to break someone so brilliant, wanted to give him a reason to use the skills he'd buried, wanted, more than she should have, to see him smile for real. Nathan showed up at Titan Core Industries at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, standing in the lobby like he wasn't entirely sure he should be there. Vanessa spotted him through the glass wall of her office and felt an unexpected flutter of nerves. She'd invited dozens of consultants and specialists into this building over the years, but somehow this felt different. She met him at the elevator bank on the 43rd floor. He'd worn clean jeans and a button-down shirt that looked like it had been ironed carefully but was still a few years past its prime. The contrast between his clothes and the marble and steel lobby couldn't have been sharper. "Thanks for coming," Vanessa said. Nathan nodded, his eyes taking in the space with the quiet assessment of someone who noticed details. "Nice building. It's impressive when you first see it. After a while, it's just where you work." She gestured toward the secure doors. "The lab's this way." They walked through a maze of corridors, past conference rooms where teams huddled over laptops, past offices where executives barked into phones. Nathan didn't say anything, but Vanessa caught him looking at the photos lining the walls. Company milestones, product launches, the CEO shaking hands with governors and senators. The engineering lab occupied the entire east wing of the floor. Vanessa swiped her badge and led Nathan inside. The space was bright and clinical, workstations arranged around a central area where the prototype battery system sat on a testing platform. 3 engineers looked up as they entered. "Everyone, this is Nathan Reed," Vanessa said. "He's going to take a look at our thermal management issue." The lead engineer, a man named David Chen, frowned slightly. "I thought we were bringing in the team from Stuttgart next week." "We are. But Nathan has experience with hybrid systems, and I wanted another perspective." Vanessa kept her voice level, the tone that said she wasn't asking for permission. David's frown deepened, but he nodded. The other engineers looked curious and slightly skeptical. Vanessa didn't blame them. They'd been working on this problem for 2 months, and now some guy in worn jeans was supposed to solve it in an afternoon. "Can you walk him through the issue?" Vanessa asked David. David approached the prototype with the resigned air of someone explaining something for the 10th time. "We've got a solid-state battery design with excellent energy density, but under high-load conditions, we're seeing thermal buildup that triggers the safety cutoffs. We've tried 17 different cooling configurations, adjusted the charge controller algorithms, even redesigned the cell spacing. Nothing works." "What's that? Nathan moved closer to the prototype, his eyes tracking over the assembly. He didn't touch anything yet, just looked. The engineers watched him with thinly veiled doubt. "What's your target operating temperature?" Nathan asked. 65 Celsius maximum sustained load. "And you're hitting?" 82 at peak draw. Nathan nodded slowly. "Can I see the thermal imaging data?" "Guys, Bus. David pulled it up on a nearby monitor. Nathan studied the false color images, watching heat patterns bloom across the battery pack during stress tests. He was quiet for so long that one of the engineers started to fidget. "Your cooling system's fine," Nathan said finally. "Problem's not heat dissipation, it's heat generation." David crossed his arms. "We've optimized the cell chemistry as much as possible. The energy density requirements don't leave room for... Not the chemistry, the architecture." Nathan pointed at the screen. "Look at the thermal pattern. It's not uniform. You're getting hotspots in the interconnects between cell clusters. The interconnects are standard busbar design," David said, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "Industry best practice is. For lithium-ion, sure, but solid-state cells have different internal resistance characteristics. The current distribution isn't balanced." Nathan turned to look at the prototype itself. "May I?" Vanessa nodded. Nathan approached the battery pack and knelt down, examining the connections between cell modules. His fingers traced the bus bars without touching them, following pathways only he could see. "You're pushing 30% more current through the center modules than the outer ones," he said. "That's where your heat's coming from. The cooling system's trying to fix a problem that shouldn't exist." The engineers exchanged glances. David pulled up another screen, this one showing current distribution models. He stared at the data for a long moment, then his expression changed. "Son of a bitch," he said quietly. "We never modeled for resistance variance in solid state." "It's not intuitive," Nathan said, standing up. "Solid state looks like it should behave the same as lithium-ion, just safer. But the ionic conductivity is different. You need to redesign your interconnect topology to balance the load." That would require rebuilding the entire pack architecture, one of the other engineers said. Not the entire thing, just the bus bar layout and the charge controller routing. Maybe 3 weeks of work. Nathan looked at Vanessa. If you want, I can sketch out what I mean. Vanessa felt something loosen in her chest. 3 weeks. Her team had been stuck on this problem for 2 months, and Nathan had identified the root cause in less than 20 minutes. Please, she said. Nathan spent the next hour working with the engineers, drawing diagrams on a whiteboard and explaining the physics behind solid-state current distribution. Vanessa watched David's skepticism gradually transform into focus, then excitement. By the time Nathan finished, all 3 engineers were crowded around the whiteboard, asking questions and building on his ideas. This could work, David said, studying the diagrams. We'd need to run simulations, but the theory's sound. What? More than sound, one of the other engineers added. This might actually solve it. Nathan checked his watch. I should get going. Need to be at my daughter's school by 3. Of course. Vanessa walked him back toward the elevator. When they were out of earshot of the lab, she said, That was incredible. My team's been stuck for months. They're good engineers. They just got locked into one way of thinking about the problem. Happens to everyone. They reached the elevator. Vanessa pressed the call button, then turned to face him. Nathan, I want to hire you. He blinked. What? As a consultant, maybe more depending on how things go. We need someone who can think the way you do. I told you, I've been out of the industry for 3 years. I'm not current on... You just solved a problem in 20 minutes that's cost us 2 months of development time. You're plenty current. Vanessa paused, choosing her words carefully. I know you have priorities. I know your daughter comes first. We can work around that. Flexible hours, work from home when you need to. Whatever makes it possible. Nathan was quiet, his expression unreadable. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, doors sliding open. He didn't get in. Why are you doing this? He asked. Because you're brilliant, and my company needs brilliant people. There are thousands of brilliant engineers. You could hire any of them. But I'm asking you. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Vanessa had negotiated with venture capitalists, argued with board members, stared down competitors in hostile takeover attempts. But Nathan's gaze made her feel exposed in a way none of that ever had, like he could see past the executive presence to something more honest underneath. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Take whatever time you need. Vanessa pulled out her phone. What's your email? I'll send you the formal offer. Nathan gave her an address. The elevator doors started to close, and he caught them, stepping inside. Thanks for the opportunity, even if I don't take it. You will, Vanessa said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. The doors closed. Vanessa stood in the hallway for a moment, staring at her reflection in the polished metal. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, the sense that she was standing at the edge of something important, and couldn't quite see what it was yet. Her phone buzzed. Rachel, asking if she was coming to the 2:00 meeting with suppliers. Vanessa pushed away from the elevator and headed back to her office, but her mind kept circling back to the lab, to Nathan kneeling by the prototype, seeing patterns no one else had noticed, to the careful way he'd explained the solution, never condescending, always assuming the other engineers would understand once they saw what he saw. She sent the offer letter that afternoon. Consultant position, generous hourly rate, flexible schedule. She tried not to check her email obsessively for a response. Nathan didn't answer that day, or the next. Vanessa told herself it didn't matter, that she had a dozen other things demanding her attention. But she kept thinking about him driving that beaten pickup truck, about him saying a sandwich was his first meal in 2 days, about the way he'd lit up talking about engineering problems before remembering to be tired again. On the 3rd day, her phone rang. Nathan. I talked to my daughter, he said without preamble, about the job offer. Vanessa sat up straighter at her desk. What did she say? She asked if it would make me happy. Nathan's voice was quiet. I didn't know how to answer that. I haven't thought about being happy in a long time. What did you tell her? That I used to love this work before everything else happened. He was silent for a moment. She told me I should try again. Vanessa felt her heart rate pick up. Is that a yes? It's a yes, but I need you to understand something. My daughter comes first, always. If there's ever a conflict between work and her, work loses. I wouldn't expect anything else. And I'm going to mess up sometimes. I've been out of this world for a while. I'm going to need time to get back up to speed. We all mess up, Nathan. That's not a deal breaker. He let out a breath that might have been a laugh. Okay, then I'm in. When can you start? Monday? Monday's perfect. They worked out logistics, parking pass, building access, which projects he'd be working on. When Vanessa finally hung up, she realized she was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the careful, professional expression she wore through meetings, but something genuine. Rachel stuck her head in the office. Good news? We just hired a new consultant. Might turn into something permanent. Anyone I know? Vanessa shook her head. But you will. He's going to change everything. Yeah. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Vanessa cleared Nathan's security clearance, set up his workstation, scheduled introductions with key team members. She told herself she was just being thorough, making sure the onboarding process went smoothly. But Sunday night, alone in her apartment with takeout she barely touched, she admitted the truth. She was excited to see him again. Excited in a way that had nothing to do with engineering problems or business outcomes. That should have worried her. Vanessa Carter didn't do personal connections. She did strategic relationships, professional networks, carefully managed interactions designed to advance specific goals. But Nathan didn't fit into any of those categories. He was just someone who'd stopped to help her on a frozen highway and somehow become someone she couldn't stop thinking about. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Vanessa got to the office at 6:30, earlier than usual. She went through her normal routine, emails, schedule review, team status updates, but kept glancing at the clock. Nathan arrived at 9. Vanessa met him in the lobby again, handed him a badge and a tablet with all his access credentials. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be, Mashte. She introduced him to the team, showed him his workstation, walked him through Titan Core's project management systems. Nathan absorbed everything quietly, asking occasional questions that revealed how quickly he was processing information. The engineers who'd been skeptical last week were watching him now with open curiosity. We're starting you on the thermal management redesign, Vanessa explained. David's team will handle the simulations and testing, but we need you to finalize the interconnect topology. Nathan nodded, already pulling up the files from last week's session. Within minutes, he was deep in technical specifications, making notes and sketching modifications. Vanessa left him to work, returning to her own mountain of responsibilities. But she found excuses to walk past his workstation throughout the day. Each time, Nathan was focused on his screen, occasionally talking through problems with David or one of the other engineers. He looked more alive than he had at the diner, more present. At 2:30, Nathan appeared in her office doorway. I need to leave, he said. School pickup. Of course. How did the morning go? Good. Really good, actually. I forgot how much I missed this. He hesitated. Thank you for pushing me to come back. Thank me when we solve this battery problem. Nathan almost smiled. Deal. He left, and Vanessa watched him go, feeling that strange tug of emotion again. She forced herself to focus on the contract negotiation she'd been avoiding all day. But the words kept blurring together. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Nathan worked mornings and early afternoons, always leaving by 3 to pick up his daughter. He never talked about her much. Vanessa got the sense he was protecting something private, something too important to expose to casual workplace conversation. But occasionally she'd catch him looking at photos on his phone during lunch, and the expression on his face would shift into something gentle and fierce at the same time. The battery redesign progressed faster than anyone expected. Nathan's interconnect topology worked exactly as he'd predicted, dropping operating temperatures by 23 degrees. The engineers who'd been skeptical were now coming to him with every problem they couldn't solve. He answered patiently, explaining his reasoning, teaching them to see systems the way he did. Vanessa watched him transform from the exhausted man on the highway into someone who seemed to remember what competence felt like. He was still quiet, still careful with his words, but there was an energy to him now that hadn't been there before. 3 weeks into his consulting contract, Vanessa invited him to lunch, not at the diner this time, at a quiet Italian place near the office where they could actually talk without shouting over diner noise. Nathan looked uncertain when she suggested it. Is this a work thing? Does it need to be? He considered that. No, I guess it doesn't. They met at the restaurant, a small place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomatoes in the air. Vanessa ordered wine. Nathan stuck with water. Not a drinker? She asked. Not when I'm picking up my daughter in 2 hours. She can smell it, and then I get questions I don't want to answer. Vanessa smiled. Smart kid. Terrifyingly smart. She's already asking about algebra, and she's in 3rd grade. Takes after her father. Nathan shook his head. She takes after her mother. My wife was the really brilliant one. I just borrowed some of it. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife directly. Vanessa felt the air in the conversation shift, becoming more fragile. Was? She asked gently. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, turning his water glass in slow circles. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. The word landed between them like something physical. Vanessa set down her wine glass, suddenly feeling stupid for ordering it. I'm so sorry, she said. We were living overseas. Singapore, then Vietnam, then Malaysia. I was jumping between companies, doing consulting work, basically living in hotels and engineering labs. And Sarah, my wife, she was running an education nonprofit, setting up STEM programs in rural schools. We were both so focused on our work that we almost missed it. Yeah, boy, is bisham. Missed what? The symptoms. She'd been tired for months, losing weight, having these headaches that wouldn't go away. We kept saying it was stress, that we needed a vacation, that once the current project was done, we'd slow down. Nathan's voice had gone flat, reciting facts instead of feeling them. By the time we actually got her to a doctor, it was stage 4, glioblastoma. They gave her 6 months. She made it 8. Vanessa didn't know what to say. Every response felt inadequate, performative, so she just waited, letting Nathan continue if he wanted to. Mia was 5, he said, old enough to understand something was wrong, too young to really process what death meant. Sarah spent those last 8 months trying to leave enough of herself behind that Mia would remember her. Videos, letters, photo albums. She wrote birthday cards for every year until Mia turned 18. Oh, God, Vanessa breathed. When she died, I couldn't stay overseas anymore. Couldn't keep working 90-hour weeks pretending everything was fine. So I came back to Chicago, found an apartment I could afford, and tried to figure out how to be both parents instead of just one. Nathan finally looked up at her. That's why I wouldn't take money for fixing your car, and that's why I hesitated about working for you. Because the last time I prioritized my career, I missed the signs that my wife was dying. The food arrived, but neither of them touched it immediately. Vanessa felt like she'd been given something precious and fragile, something she needed to handle carefully. Is that why you're always gone by 3? She asked. I pick Mia up from school every day. We have a routine, homework, dinner, reading together. I don't miss it ever. I understand why. Do you? Nathan's voice wasn't hostile, just genuinely curious. Because I've watched you work. You're at the office at 7, you leave at 8, you take calls at midnight. That's my old life, the life that made me miss what mattered. Vanessa felt the observation land somewhere uncomfortable. I don't have anyone depending on me. It's different. Is it? Or are you just really good at lying to yourself? The question should have offended her, should have felt like an attack. But Nathan's tone was gentle, almost concerned, like he recognized something in her that reminded him of himself. I like my work, Vanessa said, hearing the defensive edge in her voice. I'm good at it. I liked mine too. Was good at it. But it wasn't enough to build a life on. Nathan picked up his fork, finally starting to eat. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying I recognize the pattern. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Vanessa's mind was spinning, processing everything Nathan had said. She thought about her apartment, always empty, her friends, who were really just colleagues she occasionally had drinks with, her family, scattered across the country, communicating mostly through birthday texts and holiday calls. When had she last felt genuinely connected to another human being? Tell me about Mia, she said, needing to shift the conversation. Nathan's whole face changed. What do you want to know? Everything. What's she like? So Nathan told her about Mia's obsession with space exploration. Her collection of rocks she insisted were meteorites, but were probably just gravel. Her ability to ask questions that made him question everything he thought he understood about the world. He told her about the stuffed elephant named Doctor, Trunks, who'd been Sarah's first gift to Mia and now sat on the nightstand like a guardian. About how Mia had her mother's laugh and her mother's way of seeing people, of understanding what they needed even when they couldn't say it themselves. She sounds wonderful, Vanessa said. She's the only thing I got right. Nathan pushed his plate aside, food mostly uneaten. Everything else I've managed to screw up pretty thoroughly. But Mia, she's going to be okay. I'll make sure of it. You're doing better than you think. The work you're doing at Titan Core, Nathan, you're solving problems engineers with decades more experience can't touch. That's just pattern recognition. Anyone could do it with enough practice. That's not true, and you know it. Nathan looked at her across the table, and Vanessa felt something pass between them. Not attraction exactly, though she'd be lying if she said that wasn't part of it, but something deeper, recognition, like they saw in each other something familiar and lonely and trying very hard to pretend it wasn't. I should get going, Nathan said, checking his phone. Almost 2:30. Of course. They split the check despite Vanessa's protests and walked back toward the office together. The afternoon sun was weak and cold, winter still holding Chicago in its grip. Can I ask you something? Boss Nathan said as they reached Titan Core's entrance. Anything. Why did you really give me that sandwich? On the highway. You were about to lose everything, but you stopped to give me food. Vanessa thought about it. You looked like you needed it more than I did. That's it? Is there supposed to be more? Nathan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. No, I guess sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. He left to pick up his daughter, and Vanessa returned to her office. But she couldn't focus on work. Kept thinking about what Nathan had said, about lying to herself, about building a life on something more than career success. That evening, sitting in her apartment with the city lights spread out below her, Vanessa opened her contacts and scrolled through the names. Hundreds of people, colleagues, business partners, industry contacts. She tried to think of one person she could call just to talk. One person who knew her as more than Vanessa Carter, billionaire executive. The list was depressingly short. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Just a photo. Mia at the kitchen table, surrounded by homework and books, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. She wanted me to tell you thank you for giving me a job. Says I'm less grumpy now. Vanessa stared at the photo. This little girl she'd never met, who'd lost her mother and still found reasons to smile, who told her father to take the job because it might make him happy. She texted back, tell her she's welcome, and tell her she's right. You are less grumpy. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, we're ordering pizza tonight. Too tired to cook. Want to join? Vanessa read the message 3 times, making sure she understood what he was asking. This wasn't a business dinner or a professional lunch. This was Nathan inviting her into his real life, into the part he protected. She should say no. Should maintain professional boundaries. Should remember that mixing work and personal relationships was a recipe for disaster. She texted back, what kind of pizza? Mia insists on pineapple. I've tried to raise her better, but she's stubborn. Pineapple pizza is underrated. What's your address? Yeah. Nathan sent her the details. Vanessa looked at the dress she was wearing, the heels, the carefully styled hair. All of it wrong for pizza night in a Bridgeport apartment with a single father and his 8-year-old daughter. She changed into jeans and a sweater, pulled her hair into a ponytail, and grabbed her coat. The drive to Nathan's neighborhood took 20 minutes. The building was old but maintained, the kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors. Vanessa felt wildly out of place pulling her BMW into visitor parking. Nathan's apartment was on the 3rd floor. Vanessa climbed the stairs, wondering what she was doing, wondering if this was a terrible idea. Nathan answered the door before she could knock. You found it okay? GPS made it easy. He stepped aside to let her in. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with the bare minimum of furniture. IKEA basics, nothing that suggested Nathan cared much about interior design. But there were drawings taped to the walls, space stations and rocket ships rendered in crayon and marker. Mia's work. A little girl appeared from what must have been the bedroom, studying Vanessa with open curiosity. She had dark hair like her father, but her face was rounder, softer. Her mother's features, probably. "You're Vanessa," Mia said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "I am. You must be Mia." "Did you really give my dad a sandwich when your car was broken?" Vanessa glanced at Nathan, who looked slightly embarrassed. "I did." "That was nice. He skips lunch a lot when he thinks I'm not paying attention." Mia turned to Nathan. "I told you people notice." "You're too smart for your own good," Nathan said, but his voice was warm. The pizza arrived 15 minutes later. They ate sitting on the floor around a coffee table that had definitely seen better days. Mia asked Vanessa questions with the relentless enthusiasm of someone who'd learned the world was interesting and wanted to understand all of it immediately. "Do you know about black holes? Dad says they bend space and time. Is that real?" "It is," Vanessa said. "Einstein figured it out." "Do you know him?" "He died before I was born." Mia looked disappointed. "That's too bad. I have questions." Nathan laughed, the sound surprising and genuine. "You have questions for everyone, kiddo. After dinner, Mia showed Vanessa her rock collection, 17 specimens carefully labeled with masking tape and marker. Some were clearly just gravel from the parking lot, but Mia described them with scientific precision, explaining which ones might be sedimentary and which were definitely igneous. "This one's my favorite," Mia said, holding up a chunk of quartz. "Mom found it on a beach in Malaysia. She said it was good luck." Vanessa saw Nathan's expression shift, becoming more careful. "It's beautiful," she said to Mia. "Do you have a favorite rock?" "I've never really collected them, but maybe I should start." Well, Mia considered this seriously. "I can help you, but you have to actually look at them, not just keep them in a drawer." "That's a deal." Eventually, Mia's bedtime arrived. Nathan took her to brush teeth and change into pajamas, leaving Vanessa alone in the living room. She looked around the small space, seeing evidence of Nathan's life everywhere. Bills stacked on the counter, organized but not quite paid. A calendar on the wall with Mia's school events marked in careful handwriting. Photographs on a bookshelf. Nathan and Sarah on what must have been their wedding day, both of them young and happy and unaware of what was coming. Nathan returned a few minutes later. "She wants to say goodnight." Vanessa followed him to Mia's bedroom. The little girl was already under the covers, Dr. Trunks tucked beside her. "Thanks for coming to dinner," Mia said sleepily. "Thanks for inviting me." "You should come again. Dad's happier when there are other people around." Nathan looked like he wanted to say something, but Mia was already closing her eyes. He kissed her forehead, turned on the nightlight, and led Vanessa back to the living room. "Sorry about that," he said quietly. "She doesn't have a filter. She's wonderful. You're doing an amazing job with her." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted again. "Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. I just try to make sure she feels safe and loved and hope that's enough." "It is enough. Trust me." They stood there in the small living room, the silence stretching between them. Vanessa knew she should leave. It was late and Nathan had work tomorrow, and she'd already crossed enough professional boundaries for one evening. But she didn't want to go back to her empty apartment, didn't want to return to a life that suddenly felt very small and very lonely. "I should go," she said anyway. Nathan walked her to the door. "Thanks for coming. I know it's not exactly—" He gestured around the apartment. "This isn't what you're used to." "It's better," Vanessa said, surprising herself with the honesty. "This is real. My place is just expensive furniture and a nice view. You could change that." "Could I?" Nathan looked at her, and Vanessa felt that connection again, that sense of understanding passing between them wordlessly. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think you could." Vanessa left, driving back through Chicago streets that felt colder and emptier than they had an hour ago. When she got home, she stood in her living room and looked at the minimalist furniture, the carefully curated art on the walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the skyline. None of it felt like home. She thought about Mia's rock collection, labeled in marker, about Nathan's tired smile when his daughter asked impossible questions, about pizza on the floor and drawings taped to walls and photographs of people who were happy once, before life got complicated. Vanessa pulled out her phone and opened the text thread with Nathan. Started typing, then stopped. Started again. Finally settled on something simple. "Thanks for tonight. Your daughter is amazing. You both are." The response came quickly. "She liked you. That doesn't happen often. She's protective." "Of you?" "Of both of us. She learned early that the world isn't always safe, makes her cautious about new people." Vanessa understood that. "For what it's worth, I liked her too, a lot. She wants to know if you've ever been to the planetarium. Apparently, we need to take you. I haven't been since I was a kid." "Then we're going. Saturday afternoon, if you're free. Mia's already planning the itinerary." Vanessa smiled at her phone. "I'm free." "Good. Fair warning, though. She'll have about 300 questions, and she'll expect real answers. I'll study up. See you tomorrow at work?" "Tomorrow at work." Vanessa set down her phone and looked around her apartment again. It still felt empty, but for the first time in years, she could imagine what it might feel like to have something worth coming home to. Something real. Something that mattered. Something like what she'd seen tonight in Nathan's small apartment, where love existed in the everyday moments and happiness didn't require perfection. She thought about Nathan's question at lunch, about whether she was lying to herself, about building a life on more than just career success. Maybe she was ready to stop lying. Maybe she was ready to admit that what she'd been chasing all these years, the promotions, the deals, the board positions, wasn't actually what she wanted. Maybe what she wanted was pizza on the floor and crayon drawings and a little girl's gap-toothed smile. Maybe what she wanted was standing in a small apartment in Bridgeport, raising his daughter alone and trying to remember what happiness felt like. Vanessa went to bed of that night thinking about Saturday, about the planetarium, about Nathan and Mia and the possibility of something she'd never let herself imagine before. A life that was more than work, more than success, more than the lonely view from a penthouse apartment, a life that was actually worth living. Saturday arrived with the kind of bright cold that made Chicago look sharper than it actually was. Vanessa spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear to a planetarium visit with an 8-year-old and her father. Everything in her closet felt wrong, too formal, too expensive, too much like she was trying to prove something. She settled on jeans and a sweater that had cost more than most people's car payments, but at least looked normal. Then she spent another 10 minutes wondering if she should bring something. A gift for Mia? That felt too obvious. Coffee for Nathan? Too date-like. She finally grabbed a bag of those fancy cookies from the bakery near her apartment, the kind with real chocolate chips, and told herself it was just being polite. Nathan had suggested meeting at the planetarium rather than picking her up, which Vanessa appreciated. She wasn't ready to explain to her doorman why a pickup truck was idling in front of her building. The thought made her feel guilty immediately, not because she was ashamed of Nathan, but because she was ashamed of herself for even having that instinct. The planetarium parking lot was surprisingly full for a Saturday afternoon. Vanessa found a spot and sat in her car for a moment, watching families stream toward the entrance. Kids pulling their parents, parents herding multiple children, the occasional exhausted-looking adult carrying a sleeping toddler. This was a world she'd never been part of, had never wanted to be part of, if she was honest with herself. So why was her heart beating faster? She spotted Nathan's truck pulling in 3 rows over. Mia jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped, wearing a bright purple coat and a hat with a pom-pom on top. Nathan followed more slowly, locking the door and saying something that made Mia bounce impatiently. Vanessa got out of her car. Mia spotted her immediately and waved with the full-body enthusiasm of someone who hadn't learned to be self-conscious yet. "You came!" Mia shouted, like there had been doubt. "Of course I came." Vanessa held up the bag of cookies. "And I brought contraband." Mia's eyes went wide. "What's contraband?" "Things you're not supposed to have. In this case, cookies before dinner." Nathan reached them, shaking his head but smiling. "You're a bad influence." "I'm an excellent influence. Ask anyone at Titan Core." "I have asked. The consensus is you're terrifying." "Even better." They walked toward the entrance together, Mia between them, chattering about the exhibits she wanted to see. Nathan had clearly been here before. He knew which entrance to use, where the coat check was, which shows were worth the wait. Vanessa followed his lead, feeling oddly grateful to not be in charge for once. The planetarium was everything Vanessa had forgotten about museums. Crowded and loud and full of children asking questions at volumes that suggested they'd never heard of inside voices. Mia dragged them to the solar system exhibit first, pointing out facts she already knew and asking Nathan to confirm or correct them. Jupiter has 79 moons, Mia announced. That's more than any other planet. Currently, Nathan said, but we keep finding new ones. Might be more by the time you're in high school. How do we keep finding them if they've been there the whole time? Better telescopes. Better math. Sometimes we don't see things until we know how to look. Mia considered this with the seriousness of someone half her age. That's stupid. The moons didn't change. We did. Exactly. Opposite. Vanessa watched them interact, seeing the patience in Nathan's responses, the way he never talked down to his daughter. Mia asked questions like she expected real answers, and Nathan gave them to her without simplification. It was the same way he explained engineering problems at work, assuming the other person was smart enough to understand if you just gave them the right information. They moved through the exhibit slowly, stopping whenever something caught Mia's attention. At the meteorite display, Mia pressed her face against the glass, studying the rocks with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing every detail. "Do you think any of my rocks are really meteorites?" she asked Nathan. "Probably not, kiddo. The meteorites are pretty rare." "But not impossible?" "Not impossible. Then I'm going to keep looking." Nathan glanced at Vanessa over Mia's head, and something passed between them, a shared understanding of what it meant to watch this little girl refuse to give up on things, even when the odds were terrible. The planetarium show started at 3. They filed into the Dome Theater with 100 other people, finding seats near the middle. The lights dimmed, and suddenly they were surrounded by stars, the ceiling transforming into a night sky so clear it looked like nowhere near Chicago. Mia gasped. Nathan reached over and squeezed her hand. Vanessa sat very still, watching the artificial stars and feeling something complicated twist in her chest. When was the last time she'd looked at the actual sky? Really looked at it, not just glanced up while walking from her car to her building. When had she stopped noticing things that weren't related to work or money or the next deal? The show walked them through the solar system, out to the edge of the galaxy, beyond into deep space where distances stopped making sense. The narrator talked about time and light, about how looking at stars meant looking into the past, because light took so long to reach them. "Everything you see is already gone," the narrator said. "When we look at the stars, we're looking at history." Mia leaned over to Nathan. "If the light takes that long, how do we know the stars are still there?" "We don't," Nathan whispered back. "We just have to trust that they are." After the show, they walked out blinking into the regular lights of the museum. Mia was full of new questions, and Nathan answered them while Vanessa trailed slightly behind, still thinking about stars and light and things that were already gone by the time you saw them. They ended up in the museum cafe, drinking overpriced hot chocolate, while Mia drew rocket ships on the paper placemats. Nathan looked more relaxed than Vanessa had ever seen him at work. The constant tension in his shoulders finally eased. "This was nice," Vanessa said. "Thank you for inviting me." "Mia invited you. I just passed along the message." "Did she?" Nathan smiled. "Okay, maybe I suggested it first, but she approved enthusiastically." "I'm glad she approved." Eek. Mia looked up from her drawing. "Do you like space?" "I do," Vanessa said, "though I don't know as much about it as you do." "That's okay. Dad says not everyone has to know everything. You just have to know what's important to you." "What's important to you?" Mia thought about it. Space, rocks, Dad, my friends at school, Dr. Trunks, in that order. Good priorities. What's important to you? The question stopped Vanessa cold. What was important to her? A month ago, she would have said her career, her company, her reputation. But sitting in a museum cafe with melting whipped cream on her hot chocolate and crayon drawings scattered across the table, those answers felt hollow. "I'm still figuring that out," she said honestly. Mia nodded like this was a perfectly reasonable answer. "Mom used to say it's okay to not know things as long as you keep looking for answers. She said that's what makes life interesting." Nathan's expression shifted, becoming more careful. Vanessa saw him watching his daughter, making sure she was okay talking about her mother. But Mia seemed fine, just matter of fact. Your mom sounds like she was smart, Vanessa said. She was really smart. She helped build schools in places where kids didn't have them. Mia returned to her drawing. Dad says I'm like her. I don't see it, but he says it anyway. You are like her, Nathan said quietly. More than you know. They stayed at the museum until closing, wandering through exhibits until even Mia started to drag. When they finally left, the sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple over Lake Michigan. Nathan walked Vanessa to her car. Mia had run ahead slightly, chasing a leaf the wind had picked up. She really did have a good time, Nathan said. Thank you for coming. I had a good time too. Better than I expected, honestly. You expected it to be boring? I expected it to be awkward. I don't do this. Vanessa gestured vaguely. Family things, kids, museums on Saturday afternoons. What do you usually do on Saturday afternoons? Work, mostly, or go to the gym, sometimes both. Eat. Nathan shook his head. That's depressing. It's productive. It's lonely. Vanessa wanted to argue, but couldn't. He was right. It was lonely. She just hadn't let herself acknowledge it until recently. Come to dinner tomorrow, Nathan said suddenly. I'm making pasta. Nothing fancy, but Mia's been asking when you're coming back, and I figured... He stopped, looking uncomfortable. Sorry, that's probably too much. You probably have plans. I don't have plans. Then come to dinner. Okay. Nathan smiled, and Vanessa felt that flutter in her chest again. The one she'd been trying to ignore for weeks now. The one that suggested this was becoming something more than professional courtesy or friendly gratitude. She drove home thinking about Nathan's apartment, about Mia's questions, about the way Nathan looked at his daughter like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. When she got back to her penthouse, it felt even emptier than usual. The next evening, Vanessa showed up at Nathan's apartment with a bottle of wine and no expectations. Mia answered the door wearing an apron that was too big for her, flour on her face. We're making pasta from scratch, she announced. Dad says it's better than the box kind. It is better, Nathan called from the kitchen. Come on in, Vanessa. Hope you're ready to work. But Vanessa found Nathan at the counter, surrounded by flour and eggs and what looked like the remnants of a cooking disaster. He'd rolled up his sleeves and there was dough stuck to his forearms. This looks dangerous, Vanessa said. It's under control, mostly. Nathan gestured to the flour. You ever made fresh pasta? I've bought very expensive pasta. Does that count? No, here. He pulled out another apron. You're learning today. The next hour was chaos. Mia proved surprisingly competent at mixing dough, while Vanessa struggled to get the consistency right. Nathan moved between them, offering guidance and making adjustments, occasionally laughing at Vanessa's attempts. You're supposed to knead it, not murder it, he said, watching her attack the dough. I'm kneading. You're destroying. Gentler. Like this. He put his hands over hers, guiding the motion. Vanessa became very aware of how close he was standing, the warmth of his hands, the way he smelled like flour and something else she couldn't identify. Better? She asked. Better. Eventually, they got the pasta rolled out and cut into rough fettuccine. It wasn't pretty, but Nathan declared it good enough. While the pasta cooked, he made sauce, a simple tomato and basil situation that smelled incredible. Mia set the table with the careful concentration of someone who'd been given an important job. They ate together at the small kitchen table, knees almost touching in the cramped space. The pasta was perfect. The wine Vanessa brought paired well with the sauce. Mia told them about a fight at school between two boys in her class, describing it with the dramatic flair of someone who'd witnessed history. And then Tommy said he was going to tell the teacher, but Marcus said that was tattling. And I said, actually, it's only tattling if you're trying to get someone in trouble for no reason. But this was legitimate reporting. Legitimate reporting? Nathan raised an eyebrow. That's what you called it when you told me why journalists are important. I did say that. I'm impressed you remembered. I remember lots of things. Vanessa, do you think it's tattling? Vanessa considered the question seriously. I think it depends on why you're telling. If someone might get hurt, that's not tattling. That's looking out for people. Mia nodded, satisfied. That's what I said. After dinner, Mia disappeared to her room to work on homework. Nathan and Vanessa cleared the table together, falling into an easy rhythm. Nathan washed while Vanessa dried, and they didn't talk much, just existed in the same space comfortably. Can I ask you something? Nathan said, handing her a plate. Sure. Why are you really here? And don't say it's because Mia invited you or because you wanted to learn to make pasta. Vanessa set down the plate carefully. Honestly? Honestly, because I've spent the last 15 years building a career and a life that looks perfect on paper. And then I met you and Mia, and suddenly I realized I don't actually like my life very much. She gestured around the small kitchen. This feels more real than anything I've done in years. Nathan was quiet for a moment, his hands still in the soapy water. That's a lot of pressure to put on a couple of dinner invitations. I know, I'm sorry. I don't mean to make it weird. Oh, you're not making it weird, He paused, choosing words carefully. I'm still figuring out how to exist in the world, Vanessa. I'm not good company most of the time. I've got a kid who needs me, a job I'm barely keeping up with, and a whole lot of grief I haven't processed because I don't have time to fall apart. I'm not asking you to be anything other than what you are, aren't you? Because from where I'm standing, you're this brilliant, successful woman who could have anyone she wants. And I'm a widower with a truck held together with rust and hope, trying to remember how to be a person again. Vanessa felt something crack open in her chest. Nathan, I don't want anyone else. I want... She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. What do you want? I want to have dinner in small kitchens. I want to answer impossible questions from 8-year-olds. I want to make pasta from scratch and not care that it's not perfect. She looked at him directly. I want whatever this is, even if I don't completely understand it yet. Nathan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he dried his hands and stepped closer, close enough that Vanessa could see the exact color of his eyes, dark brown with flecks of gold. I haven't done this in a long time, he said quietly. The getting close to someone thing, the letting someone matter thing. I don't know if I remember how. I don't think I ever knew how in the first place. Then we're both screwed. Probably. Nathan reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender it made Vanessa's throat tight. For what it's worth, I'm glad you gave me that sandwich. For what it's worth, I'm glad your truck was on that highway. They stood there in the kitchen, not quite touching, but not pulling away either. Vanessa could hear Mia singing something in her bedroom, could hear traffic outside, could hear her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. Then Nathan kissed her, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might break or disappear. Vanessa kissed him back, and for the first time in years, felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When they pulled apart, Nathan looked slightly stunned. I should probably... He glanced toward Mia's room. I should check on her, make sure she's doing her homework and not building a rocket or something. Probably a good idea. But neither of them moved. They just stood there, grinning at each other like teenagers who'd just discovered what kissing was. Finally, Nathan stepped back. Don't leave yet. Please. Just give me 10 minutes to make sure she's settled, and then we can talk. Or not talk. Whatever you want. I'll be here. Nathan disappeared down the short hallway. Vanessa leaned against the counter, trying to process what had just happened. She'd kissed Nathan Reed. More accurately, Nathan Reed had kissed her, and it had felt more right than anything in her carefully constructed life. She heard Nathan's voice mixing with Mia's, heard laughter, heard the sound of a father who loved his daughter completely. It should have scared her, the complications, the responsibility, the way her life would have to change to accommodate them. But it didn't. It just felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before. Nathan returned 15 minutes later, closing Mia's bedroom door quietly behind him. She wants you to say goodnight before you leave. Of course. They walked to Mia's room together. The little girl was already under her covers, Dr. Trunks positioned carefully on the pillow beside her. Good night, Mia, Vanessa said from the doorway. Are you coming back? Mia asked. Do you want me to? Yeah, you're nice, and Dad smiles more when you're around. Vanessa felt her throat get tight. Then I'll come back. Promise? Promise. Mia seemed satisfied with that. Nathan kissed her forehead, turned out the overhead light, and led Vanessa back to the living room. They sat on the worn couch together, not touching, but close enough that Vanessa could feel his presence like heat. We should probably talk about what just happened, Nathan said. Probably. I like you, more than I should, considering you're technically my boss and I met you like a month ago. I like you too, more than makes sense. And I have a daughter who I will always prioritize over everything else. I know. I wouldn't want it any other way. Nathan looked at her. This is going to be complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated. That's not true. Plenty of simple things are worth doing. Okay, fine, but this particular thing is both complicated and worth doing. If you're willing to try, Pete. Are you sure? Because I come with a lot of baggage, Vanessa. A dead wife I still dream about sometimes. A kid who asks questions I don't know how to answer. An apartment that's too small and a truck that barely runs. And a life that's held together with duct tape and good intentions. Vanessa took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I have a penthouse apartment I never want to be in, a career that's eating me alive, and absolutely no idea how to be a normal human person. So I think we're about even on the baggage front. Nathan laughed, the sound surprised out of him. When you put it that way, we don't have to figure everything out tonight. We can just see what happens. Take it slow. I don't know how to take anything slow. I'm either all in or all out. Then be all in. With me. With whatever this is. Nathan kissed her again, deeper this time, less careful. Vanessa melted into it, feeling years of loneliness and isolation crack apart like ice breaking up in spring. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. This is insane. Completely. You're my boss. Technically, you're a consultant, so it's a gray area. That's not better. It's a little better. They sat together on the couch until late, talking about nothing and everything. Nathan told her more about Sarah, about the grief that still ambushed him sometimes. Vanessa told him about her family, about parents who'd expected greatness and got a daughter who'd achieved it while losing herself in the process. Do you talk to them? Nathan asked. Your parents? Holidays mostly. They're proud of me, I think, but they don't really know me. Be it me. That's lonely. It is. I didn't realize how lonely until recently. Nathan squeezed her hand. For what it's worth, I think you're pretty great. The real you, not the billionaire executive version. How do you know there's a difference? Because I've seen both. And the woman who stopped to give me a sandwich while her career was falling apart, that's who I want to know better. Vanessa stayed until almost midnight, which was later than she'd intended, but earlier than she wanted. When she finally forced herself to leave, Nathan walked her down to her car. So, he said, hands in his pockets against the cold. Are we doing this? I think we are. And we're telling people at work? Vanessa thought about it. Let's keep it quiet for now. Not because I'm ashamed, but because I don't want to complicate your position at Titan Core. Once you're more established, once it's clear you're there because you're brilliant and not because we're whatever we are, then we can be more open. That works. Nathan leaned in and kissed her one more time, soft and quick. Drive safe. Always. Vanessa drove home with her heart still racing, her lips still tingling, her entire worldview slightly tilted off its axis. When she got back to her apartment, she stood in her living room and looked around at the expensive furniture, the carefully curated art, the view that had once felt like achievement and now just felt empty. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, started making a list. Things that matter. Nathan. Mia. Work that means something, not just work that pays well. Finding out who I actually am underneath the career. Learning to make pasta. Understanding why stars matter, even though they're already gone by the time we see them. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next few weeks blurred together in the best way possible. At work, Nathan continued to solve problems that stumped everyone else, becoming indispensable to the battery project. The redesigned thermal management system was working better than projected, and David Chen had stopped looking skeptical and started looking impressed. "You were right about Reed," David said to Vanessa one afternoon. "He's not just good, he's exceptional." "I know. Where did you find him?" "He found me, actually. Long story." But at night and on weekends, Vanessa found herself spending more and more time in that small Bridgeport apartment. She and Mia developed their own relationship, separate from Nathan. They went to the library together, searching for books about space and geology. They started a rock collection identification project, researching each specimen online. Mia taught Vanessa about meteorites and impact craters and why the moon had phases. And with Nathan, things progressed slowly but steadily. They were careful around Mia, not wanting to confuse her or move too fast. But when they were alone, washing dishes after dinner, sitting on the couch after Mia went to bed, stealing moments in his truck when he picked her up from work, they let themselves explore what was building between them. "I forgot what this felt like," Nathan admitted one night, lying on the couch with Vanessa tucked against his side. "Wanting someone, thinking about someone when they're not there. Is it weird? Compared to—" Vanessa didn't finish the sentence. "Compared to Sarah? Compared to his late wife? Compared to the love story that ended in tragedy?" "It's different," Nathan said carefully. "Sarah and I grew up together. We were kids figuring out life at the same time. This, us, it's not that. It's two broken people who found each other at the right moment." "Broken? Aren't we? You were having a crisis about your empty life. I was barely surviving. Neither of us was okay. And now?" Nathan kissed the top of her head. "Now I think maybe we're a little less broken. Together." But not everything was easy. There were nights when Nathan went quiet, disappearing into grief that Vanessa couldn't touch. There were moments when Mia mentioned her mother and Nathan's face would close off, becoming unreachable. And there were times when Vanessa's work demanded everything, when she fell back into old patterns of 18-hour days and forgot to text, forgot to call, forgot that there were people who needed more from her than strategic brilliance. They had their first real fight 6 weeks into whatever they were calling their relationship. Vanessa had missed dinner 3 nights in a row, caught up in negotiations with a supplier. Nathan didn't complain, just sent understanding texts and told Mia that Vanessa was busy. But when Vanessa finally showed up on Friday night, exhausted and distracted, Nathan was waiting. "We need to talk," he said, after Mia went to bed. Vanessa felt her stomach drop. Those were never good words. "Okay, I can't do this if you're not actually here. I mean, you can be physically here, but if your brain is still in that office, if you're checking your phone every 5 minutes, if Mia asks you a question and you don't hear her because you're thinking about work, I can't do that. I've had a crazy week. You know that." "I do know that. And I know your job is important. But Vanessa, you're doing the same thing I did. You're disappearing into work because it's easier than being present in your actual life." "That's not fair. Isn't it? You spent the last hour responding to emails while we watched a movie. Mia gave up trying to talk to you after the 3rd time you said uh-huh without listening." Vanessa felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize." "That's the problem. You don't realize. Because you're so used to prioritizing work over everything else that you don't even notice when you're doing it. So what do you want from me? To quit my job? To pretend I'm not responsible for a $100 million project? You see, we're Shrayamkan. I want you to be here when you're here. I want you to decide that this," he gestured between them, "matters enough to actually be present for it. Because if it doesn't, if work is always going to come first, then we need to stop this before Mia gets more attached." The words hit like a punch. Vanessa stood up, anger and shame mixing together into something ugly. "You're being unfair. I'm trying. I've changed my entire life for you and Mia." "Have you? Or have you just added us to your schedule like another meeting?" "That's not true." "Then prove it. Tomorrow, spend the whole day with us. No phone, no emails, just be here." Vanessa wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the reasons why that was impossible. But looking at Nathan's face, seeing the exhaustion and frustration there, she realized he was right. She'd been doing exactly what he said, treating them like another obligation instead of the thing that made her life worth living. "Okay," she said quietly. "Tomorrow. No phone." Really?
Really?
Nathan's expression softened. I'm not trying to control you, Vanessa. I'm trying to make sure this actually works. And it can't work if you're not willing to show up. I know. You're right. I'm sorry. They held each other on the couch, and Vanessa felt the fight drain away, leaving only the truth. She'd been slipping back into old patterns because they were comfortable, because achievement was easier than vulnerability, because she didn't actually know how to just be present without also being productive. But she wanted to learn. For Nathan, for Mia, for herself. The next day, Vanessa turned off her phone completely and put it in her purse. They spent the day at the Museum of Science and Industry, letting Mia drag them through exhibits while asking approximately 1 million questions. Vanessa felt anxious at first, phantom vibrations making her reach for her phone before remembering she couldn't check it. But gradually, the anxiety faded, replaced by something lighter. She was here. Actually here. Watching Mia's face light up at the submarine exhibit, holding Nathan's hand while they wandered through the coal mine recreation, laughing at jokes that weren't work-related, thinking thoughts that didn't involve battery systems or board meetings. By the time they got back to Nathan's apartment that evening, Vanessa felt more relaxed than she had in years. "That was good," Nathan said, starting dinner. "You did good. It was hard at first, not gonna lie, but worth it. Thank you for pushing me." They made dinner together, the three of them crowded in the small kitchen. Mia insisted on helping with everything, even when her help made things take twice as long. Nathan was patient with her, explaining techniques and letting her make mistakes. Vanessa watched them and felt something shift inside her, a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. After dinner, after Mia went to bed, Nathan pulled Vanessa close on the couch. "I love you," he said simply. "I wasn't planning to say it yet, but I do. And I need you to know that before this goes any further." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too, both of you, Mia and you. This whole weird little life you've built. It's not much. It's everything." They kissed, and Vanessa felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't just Vanessa Carter, billionaire executive. She was someone's girlfriend, someone's almost stepmother, someone who made pasta from scratch and answered questions about black holes and learned that being present mattered more than being productive. But the real world kept intruding. At work, rumors started. People noticed that Nathan left every day at 3. Noticed that Vanessa seemed different, softer. David Chen pulled her aside one afternoon. "Are you and Reed involved?" he asked bluntly. Vanessa considered lying, considered dodging, but she was tired of hiding. "Yes." "Does HR know?" "Not yet. We were waiting until his position was more established." David nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think he's the best engineer we've hired in a decade. Whatever's happening between you two, it's not affecting his work." "Thank you for saying that. But you should probably tell HR sooner rather than later, before someone else does." That night, Vanessa brought it up with Nathan. They were in his apartment, Mia asleep, talking quietly about nothing important. "People at work are noticing," Vanessa said. "We should probably make it official." Imbecile. Nathan tensed slightly. "Are you worried about your reputation?" "I'm worried about your job. If this comes out wrong, if people think you're only there because we're together, then they'd be underestimating both of us." Nathan took her hand. "Tell HR. Tell whoever needs to know. I'm not hiding you." So Vanessa scheduled a meeting with HR for Monday morning, disclosed the relationship, filled out the necessary forms, prepared for whatever consequences came. The HR director listened carefully, made notes, and finally said what Vanessa had been dreading. "Given your position and his, we'll need to restructure his reporting. He can't report directly to you or anyone in your chain. We'll move him to a different department, same role, same compensation." "That works," Vanessa said, relieved it wasn't worse. When she told Nathan, he shrugged. "I don't care who I report to as long as the work is interesting." The restructuring happened quietly. Nathan moved to the Advanced Research Division, working on next-generation projects that played to his strengths. If anything, it was a better fit. He had more autonomy, More freedom to explore ideas that wouldn't pay off for years. And through it all, their relationship deepened. Nathan started talking about Sarah more openly, sharing memories without grief quite so close to the surface. Mia started calling Vanessa by her name instead of Dad's friend, which felt like acceptance. Vanessa started keeping clothes at the apartment, staying over more nights than not, learning the rhythms of their life. 3 months after that first kiss, Nathan asked her to move in. They were lying in bed, early morning light filtering through the thin curtains. Mia was still asleep down the hall. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of their breathing. "This place is too small for 3 people," Nathan said suddenly. "It's cozy. It's cramped, and you keep leaving things here anyway. Might as well make it official." Vanessa propped herself up on one elbow, looking at him. "Are you asking me to move in? Hey, I'm saying we should find a bigger place. All of us, together." "Nathan, I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but Vanessa, you're here every night anyway. You're part of our family. Mia asks me constantly when you're coming home, like this is already your home. So why are we pretending?" Ipo Voici. Vanessa felt her heart hammering. Moving in together, becoming a family, letting go of her penthouse view and her carefully curated life, and stepping fully into this messy, complicated, beautiful thing they were building. "Yes," she said. "Let's find a place together." Nathan's smile was bright enough to light the whole room. Finding a house turned out to be harder than any of them expected. Nathan wanted something affordable with a yard for Mia. Vanessa kept forgetting that normal people had budgets and would point out houses that cost what most families made in 5 years. Mia had extremely specific requirements involving trees for climbing and a basement that could become a laboratory. "I'm 8," Mia explained to the realtor during their 4th viewing. "By the time I'm 10, I'll need somewhere to conduct experiments. Dad says the kitchen table isn't appropriate for chemical reactions." The realtor looked at Nathan with barely concealed alarm. "What kind of experiments?" Nothing dangerous," Nathan said quickly. "She wants to study rocks, maybe grow some crystals. Normal kid stuff." "Crystal growing involves supersaturated solutions and precise temperature control," Mia added helpfully. "Also, I want to learn about acids and bases, but Dad says I have to wait until I'm 12 for that." They didn't get that house. Eventually, after 2 months of searching and one near breakdown where Vanessa almost suggested they just buy a mansion and be done with it, they found a place in Oak Park. 3 bedrooms, a basement that Mia immediately claimed for science, and a backyard with an oak tree that looked sturdy enough for climbing. The mortgage was more than Nathan had ever imagined paying, but Vanessa had insisted on contributing equally, and together they could manage it. "This is insane," Nathan said when they signed the papers. 6 months ago, I was barely making rent. Now I'm buying a house." 6 months ago, I was eating takeout alone in a penthouse," Vanessa countered. "So I think we both upgraded." Moving day was chaos. Vanessa's furniture from the penthouse was too modern and expensive for the Oak Park house, so most of it went into storage. Nathan's furniture was too worn and broken to be worth moving, so they donated it. They spent a weekend at IKEA, Mia running ahead and declaring everything perfect, while Nathan quietly calculated costs, and Vanessa kept sneaking items into the cart when he wasn't looking. "We don't need that lamp," Nathan said, catching her. "It matches the couch." "Ah, so say no." "We haven't picked out a couch yet." "Then we need to find one that matches this lamp." Nathan shook his head but didn't argue. He'd learned that Vanessa expressed love through providing things, through making sure they had what they needed. It was her way of taking care of them, and he was trying to let her without feeling like he was taking advantage. They moved into the Oak Park house on a Saturday in late spring. Friends from work helped carry boxes. David Chen showed up with his wife and spent an hour helping Nathan assemble furniture while making jokes about how engineers were supposed to be good at following instructions. Mia directed traffic, telling everyone where things should go with the confidence of a general commanding troops. By evening, the house was still mostly boxes and chaos, but it was theirs. Nathan ordered pizza while Vanessa tried to figure out which box had the plates. Mia sat on the kitchen floor surrounded by her rock collection, arranging specimens by category. "This is home now," Mia announced to no one in particular. Nathan felt something tight in his chest loosen. Yeah, kiddo. This is home. That night, after Mia was asleep in her new bedroom with Dr. Trunk standing guard, Nathan and Vanessa lay in their new bedroom staring at the ceiling. The mattress was on the floor because they hadn't assembled the bed frame yet. Boxes lined the walls. Nothing was organized. Everything was wrong. And Nathan had never been happier. "We did it," Vanessa said. "We did something. Not sure what yet. We became a family." Nathan rolled over to look at her. "Is that what we are? What else would you call it?" He thought about it. 3 people who'd found each other by accident and decided to build something together. A little girl who'd lost her mother and gained someone new who loved her differently, but just as much. A man who'd forgotten how to want things, and a woman who'd never learned to want the right things, both of them figuring it out together. "Yeah, he said finally. "I guess we're a family." At work, things continued to evolve. Nathan's research division was developing battery technology that wouldn't be commercial for 5 years but could revolutionize energy storage if it worked. He was in his element, solving problems that didn't have obvious answers, working with a team that respected his skills without caring about the gap in his resume. Vanessa's division moved from development to production, the thermal management redesign proving even better than projected. The board approved funding for a full manufacturing facility. Titan Core's stock price jumped 12% in a single day when they announced the technology. Vanessa got offers from 3 competitors, each one offering more money and more power than she currently had. She turned them all down without hesitation. "Why?" Rachel asked when Vanessa told her. "That offer from Velocity Motors was incredible. You'd have your own division, full autonomy, equity package worth, I'm not interested." "Vanessa, that's $40 million you just walked away from. I have enough money. What I don't have enough of is time with my family." Rachel blinked. "Your family? What me? Besides, you Swartz." Vanessa realized she'd never actually told Rachel about Nathan and Mia, had never mentioned that she'd moved out of the penthouse, that she was living in Oak Park now, that she spent her evenings helping a 3rd grader with math homework instead of answering emails. "I'm with someone," Vanessa said. "He has a daughter. We bought a house together." "You... what? When did this happen?" "Over the last few months." "And you didn't tell me?" "I wasn't hiding it. I just..." Vanessa paused. "I wanted to make sure it was real before I talked about it." Rachel studied her face. "You're different. Happier, I think. Less terrifying. I was going to say intense, but yeah, less terrifying works too." That evening, Vanessa got home to find Nathan in the backyard teaching Mia how to throw a baseball. Or trying to. Mia's form was terrible, and she kept stopping to explain the physics of projectile motion instead of actually throwing the ball. "You're thinking too much," Nathan said patiently. "Just throw it." "But if I understand the optimal release angle, I can throw it more accurately. Or you could practice throwing and let your body figure it out." Mia looked skeptical but tried again. The ball went wide, hitting the fence. Nathan retrieved it and tossed it back gently. Vanessa watched from the back door, feeling that now familiar warmth spread through her chest. This was her life now. Backyard baseball lessons and physics debates, and a man who never stopped being patient with his daughter. "How was work?" Nathan asked when he noticed her. "Good. Got offered a job at Velocity Motors." His expression flickered. Worry, maybe, or fear. "Are you taking it?" "No, I like where I am." Relief washed across his face. "You sure? I don't want you staying because of us." "I'm staying because of us. That's the whole point." Vanessa walked over and kissed him, ignoring Mia's exaggerated gagging sounds. "Besides, if I move to Velocity, who would make sure you're actually eating lunch?" "I eat lunch. Yesterday you had coffee and called it a meal." "Coffee has calories." "You're impossible." They ate dinner together at the kitchen table they'd finally assembled the week before. Mia talked about a project at school involving the solar system. She wanted to build a model that showed actual scale, which meant either making the sun impossibly large or the outer planets impossibly tiny. "You could do separate scales," Nathan suggested. "One for the sun and inner planets, one for the outer planets." "That's cheating. That's practical problem solving." "It's still cheating." Vanessa watched them debate. marveling at how much of Sarah she could see in Mia without ever having met the woman. The stubbornness, the insistence on doing things right even when it was harder, the way she approached problems like they were puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to avoid. After dinner, while Nathan helped Mia with homework, Vanessa retreated to what they designated as her home office. She had work to finish, reports to review, decisions to make, but she'd gotten better at stopping. At closing her laptop when Nathan appeared in the doorway, at setting down her phone when Mia asked a question, at being present even when her brain wanted to spiral into work mode. "Come watch a movie with us," Nathan said around 8. "I should finish this budget review." It can wait until tomorrow. It's due Monday. It's Saturday night. Come watch a movie." Vanessa looked at the spreadsheet on her screen, at the numbers that had seemed so important 5 seconds ago. Then she looked at Nathan in the doorway, at the life they were building that mattered more than any budget review. She closed her laptop. They watched some animated movie about talking animals. Mia provided commentary throughout, pointing out biological inaccuracies and questioning the physics of certain scenes. Nathan told her to just enjoy the story. Mia said she could enjoy it while also noting its flaws. Vanessa fell asleep on the couch halfway through, warm and comfortable and completely content. The next few months fell into a rhythm that felt more like a life than anything Vanessa had experienced before. Mornings were chaos, getting Mia ready for school, making breakfast, finding lost homework, reminding Nathan to actually eat something before leaving. Afternoons were work, where Vanessa and Nathan existed in different divisions but occasionally crossed paths in the cafeteria or parking lot. Evenings were homework help and dinner preparation and the endless negotiations of bedtime. And through it all, they learned each other. Learned that Nathan went quiet when he was stressed and needed space to process. Learned that Vanessa got sharp and defensive when she felt overwhelmed and needed to be reminded that not everything was a crisis. Learned that Mia inherited her mother's empathy and could sense emotional shifts in a room before anyone else noticed them. They weren't perfect. They fought sometimes, usually about small things that represented bigger tensions. Nathan got frustrated when Vanessa solved problems with money instead of time. Vanessa got frustrated when Nathan wouldn't accept help, even when he desperately needed it. Mia got frustrated when both of them treated her like she was too young to understand complicated things, but they worked through it. Talked until they understood each other, apologized when they were wrong, tried to do better next time. 6 months into living together, Mia came home from school with a permission slip for a father-daughter dance. She handed it to Nathan without comment, but Vanessa saw the way her eyes flicked toward her, saw the question Mia was too careful to ask out loud. Nathan looked at the paper, then at Mia. "You want to go to this?" "I guess. Because last year you said dances were stupid and you'd rather stay home and look at rocks." "Last year was different." Nathan glanced at Vanessa, who tried to look like she wasn't paying attention. "How was it different?" "Last year, Mom had just—" Mia stopped, choosing words carefully. "Last year was hard. This year is better." Nathan's expression shifted into something complicated, pride and grief and gratitude all mixed together. "Okay, we'll go to the dance. Lars." "Cheese, can Vanessa help me pick a dress?" The question caught Vanessa completely off guard. She looked at Nathan, who looked as surprised as she felt. They'd been careful about boundaries, about letting Mia set the pace for how much Vanessa was involved. But this felt like something significant. Like Mia was saying Vanessa wasn't just Dad's girlfriend anymore. She was something more. "If Vanessa wants to," Nathan said carefully. Vanessa felt her throat get tight. "I'd love to, too." The following Saturday, Vanessa and Mia went dress shopping. It was Vanessa's first time doing anything like this. She'd never had younger siblings, had never been around kids much before Mia, had no idea what 8-year-olds considered appropriate formal wear. Mia, it turned out, had opinions. Strong opinions. She rejected anything too frilly, too pink, too princess-like. She wanted something practical that she could move in, but also nice enough to feel special. They tried on 12 dresses before finding one Mia declared acceptable. A dark blue dress with pockets and a skirt that twirled when she spun. "This one," Mia said decisively. "I can keep rocks in the pockets if I find any." "You're not bringing rocks to the dance." "Why not? I might find a good specimen." "It's a school gymnasium, not a geology field trip." Mia looked disappointed, but agreed. They bought the dress, then stopped for ice cream, even though it was barely noon. Mia got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles and explained her current theory about how the moon formed. Something about a collision with a Mars-sized object that Vanessa was pretty sure was actually accurate. "Can I ask you something?" Mia said suddenly, in that careful tone that meant the question was important. "Of course." "Do you think you'll marry my dad?" Vanessa nearly dropped her ice cream. "I what?" "You live with us. You love him. He loves you. That's what people do when they love each other. They get married." "It's more complicated than that, Mia." "Why? Say it." "Because—" Vanessa struggled for an answer that would make sense to an 8-year-old. "Because your dad was married before to your mom, and that's complicated." "Mom's dead," Mia said matter-of-factly. "Dad didn't stop being married to her because he wanted to. She died. That's different." "I know, but your dad might not be ready for that. Might not want to get married again." Mia considered this while eating her ice cream. "I think he would marry you if you asked him." "I don't think that's how it works." "Why not? You're a girl. Girls can ask boys." "That's true. But I think—" Vanessa paused, trying to be honest. "I think when people get married, they both have to be ready. And I don't know if we're there yet. Do you want to get there?" The question was so direct, so unguarded, that Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. Did she want to marry Nathan? The thought had crossed her mind, but she'd pushed it away. Worried about moving too fast. Worried about the complications of becoming a stepmother officially. Worried that Nathan's heart still belonged at least partly to Sarah. But sitting in an ice cream shop with Mia, looking at this little girl who'd lost so much and still found room to hope for more, Vanessa knew the truth. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I do." Mia nodded, satisfied. "Then you should tell him. Maybe someday." "Someday is a waste of time. That's what Mom used to say. She said if something matters, you should do it now instead of waiting for someday." Vanessa felt her chest tighten. "Your mom was smart." "I know. Dad tells me all the time." Mia finished her ice cream and looked at Vanessa seriously. "I'm glad you're here. I was worried Dad would be sad forever." "He'll always miss your mom. That's okay." "I know. I miss her too. But I'm also happy now. Is that weird?" "No, honey. That's not weird at all. That's exactly how it should be." They drove home with the dress in its bag, Mia chattering about the dance and what shoes she should wear and whether Nathan knew how to actually dance or if they'd have to practice. Vanessa listened and responded and tried not to think too hard about the conversation they'd just had. But that night, after Mia was asleep, she told Nathan about it. "She asked if we're getting married, Vanessa said. Nathan looked up from the book he was reading. "What did you tell her?" "That it's complicated. That we both have to be ready." "Are you ready?" The question hung in the air between them. Vanessa thought about lying, about deflecting, about protecting herself from the vulnerability of wanting something this much. But she'd spent too many years hiding behind professional armor to do it in her personal life, too. "I think so," she said. "Are you?" Nathan set down his book. "I loved Sarah. Still love her? In a way. She's part of who I am, part of Mia. That's never going to change. I know, I'm not asking you to forget her. I know you're not. That's one of the things I love about you. You never made me choose between my past and my future." Nathan reached for her hand. "But yeah, I'm ready. If you're asking what I think you're asking." Vanessa felt her heart rate pick up. "I'm not asking, I'm just checking if we're on the same page." "We're on the same page, for the record." "Good to know, Sarah." They sat together on the couch, not talking about marriage directly, but both knowing the conversation had shifted something between them. The question was no longer if, but when. And knowing that, knowing they both wanted the same future, made everything feel more settled. The father-daughter dance arrived on a Friday night. Nathan wore a suit he'd borrowed from David Chen because he didn't own one. Mia wore her blue dress and kept checking that the pockets were still there, like they might have disappeared since that morning. Vanessa helped with hair and makeup, keeping it simple because Mia had strong feelings about looking like herself instead of a miniature adult. "You look beautiful," Vanessa said when they were done. Mia studied herself in the mirror critically. "I look okay." "You look beautiful," Nathan said from the doorway. His voice was thick with emotion. Just like your mom. Mia's face softened. Really? Really? She had a blue dress sort of like that. Wore it to my company Christmas party the year before you were born. I remember thinking she was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. Do you still have pictures? Tons of pictures. We can look at them when we get home, if you want. Okay. Mia grabbed her coat. We should go. I don't want to be late. Vanessa watched them leave, Nathan's hand on Mia's shoulder, both of them nervous and excited. The house felt too quiet without them. She tried to work, tried to catch up on emails, but couldn't focus. Kept thinking about Nathan's face when he'd seen Mia in that dress. The grief and love mixed together, the way he'd managed to honor Sarah's memory while moving forward with his life. She thought about Mia's question in the ice cream shop, about marriage and commitment, and building a family that included ghosts, but wasn't haunted by them. Nathan and Mia came home 3 hours later, both exhausted. Mia went straight to bed, too tired to even protest. Nathan collapsed on the couch next to Vanessa. How was it? She asked. Good, really good. Mia danced with all her friends, ate too much cake, and only asked about rocks twice. That's restraint for her. I know. Nathan leaned his head back against the couch. There were other dads there with new partners, second wives, girlfriends, whatever. And I kept thinking about how lucky I am, that you're here, that Mia loves you, that we get to have this. Vanessa took his hand. I'm the lucky one. We can both be lucky. Deal. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Nathan said, Mia asked me tonight if we're going to get married. What did you tell her? Us. I told her I hope so, if you want to. Vanessa felt her breath catch. Is that a proposal? No. A proposal would be more planned. I'd have a ring and a speech and probably be less sweaty from dancing with 8-year-olds. Nathan sat up and looked at her directly. But yeah, eventually, when it's right, I want to marry you. I want Mia to be ours officially. I want to build a life that's bigger than just surviving. I want that too. Then we're definitely on the same page. Well, that night, lying in bed, Vanessa thought about the trajectory of her life. How 6 months ago she'd been stranded on a frozen highway, about to lose everything that mattered to her career. How a stranger in a pickup truck had stopped to help without expecting anything in return. How that small act of kindness had led to this. A house in Oak Park, a little girl asleep down the hall, a man beside her who'd taught her what it meant to actually live instead of just achieve. She thought about the penthouse apartment she'd left behind, the view she'd once considered the pinnacle of success. None of it compared to this. To ordinary evenings and backyard baseball and shopping for dresses with pockets for rocks. Work continued to be complicated. Nathan's research division made a breakthrough that could revolutionize grid-scale energy storage, but it would require 5 years and several $100 million to commercialize. The board was skeptical. Vanessa found herself fighting for his project in meetings, having to recuse herself from certain discussions because of their relationship, frustrated by the bureaucracy. Let it go, Nathan told her one evening after she'd spent 20 minutes ranting about a board member who'd questioned the viability of his research. They're going to fund it or they won't. You fighting battles for me just makes both of us look bad. But they're wrong. Your technology is... My technology is unproven and expensive and 5 years away from being useful. They have legitimate concerns. Whose side are you on? Pull. I'm on the side of not making this harder than it has to be. Vanessa, I appreciate you believing in my work, but I don't need you to protect me. I can fight my own battles. It was a fair point, but it still stung. Vanessa had spent her entire career solving problems, clearing obstacles, making things happen through sheer force of will. Learning to step back and let Nathan handle his own professional challenges went against every instinct she had, but she tried. Stopped advocating for his projects and meetings, stopped trying to influence board decisions in his favor. Let him succeed or fail on his own merit. And he succeeded. The board eventually approved funding for a smaller-scale pilot program. Nathan's team would have 2 years to prove the technology worked, and if they hit their milestones, full funding would follow. It wasn't everything he wanted, but it was enough. At home, things continued to evolve. Mia started 4th grade and immediately decided she wanted to learn coding. Nathan tried to teach her, but his patience wore thin when she refused to follow the tutorial exactly and instead tried to invent her own solutions. You have to learn the basics first. Nathan said for the 10th time. But the basics are boring. I want to make a game. You can't make a game until you understand how loops work. I understand loops. Things repeat. See? I learned it. Vanessa watched them argue from the kitchen, trying not to laugh. They were so similar, both stubborn, both convinced their approach was the right one, both completely unable to back down. Maybe she could learn by building the game, Vanessa suggested. Figure out the basics as she goes. They both turned to look at her. That's not how you learn programming, Nathan said. Why not? She learned about space by building models. She learned about rocks by collecting them. Let her learn by doing. Nathan looked skeptical, but Mia was already nodding enthusiastically. Nathan looked. They compromised. Mia would work on her game, but Nathan would help her understand the concepts as they came up. Within a week, she'd built a simple program where a spaceship avoided asteroids. The code was messy and inefficient, but it worked, and Mia was prouder of it than anything she'd done before. You were right, Nathan admitted to Vanessa that night. She learns better by building things. She learns better the same way you do, by seeing problems that need solving. When did you get so good at understanding people? I'm not. I'm good at understanding you two. Everyone else is still a mystery. Fall turned to winter and the holidays approached. It would be their first Christmas together as a family, and everyone had opinions about how to celebrate. Mia wanted a real tree. Nathan wanted to keep things simple. Vanessa had no idea what she wanted because she'd spent the last decade working through the holidays. They compromised by doing everything. Got a real tree that shed needles everywhere. Decorated with a combination of Mia's handmade ornaments and fancy ones, Vanessa bought because she couldn't help herself. Strung lights that Nathan insisted on arranging in a mathematically precise pattern. Baked cookies that were slightly burned because none of them knew what they were doing. On Christmas Eve, after Mia was asleep, Nathan and Vanessa sat by the tree drinking wine and listening to the quiet. This is nice, Vanessa said. It is. I never had this. My family wasn't big on Christmas. We had dinner and exchanged gifts, but it always felt like an obligation. Sarah loved Christmas, Nathan said quietly. Went overboard with decorations, made plans months in advance, basically turned into a holiday tornado. Mia was too young to remember most of it, but I do. Vanessa took his hand. Do you miss it? Sometimes, but this is good too. Different, but good. No. They sat together, thinking about the woman who wasn't there, who'd loved Christmas and building schools, and a man who was learning to love again. Thinking about how grief and joy could exist in the same moment, how moving forward didn't mean forgetting what came before. Christmas morning was chaos. Mia woke them up at 6, demanding to open presents. Nathan made coffee while Vanessa tried to convince Mia that people needed caffeine before dealing with wrapping paper. They compromised by opening stockings first, which bought them 20 minutes. Mia got books and science kits and a telescope she'd been asking about for months. Nathan got practical things. New tools, clothes that weren't falling apart, a watch that actually worked. Vanessa got jewelry from Nathan and a drawing from Mia showing the three of them standing in front of their house labeled Our Family in careful letters. She cried. Couldn't help it. Just sat there holding this crayon drawing while tears ran down her face. Is it bad? Mia asked, worried. It's perfect. It's the best gift anyone's ever given me. They spent Christmas Day at home, cooking too much food and watching movies and generally being lazy. David Chen and his wife stopped by in the afternoon with cookies, staying for wine and conversation. Other friends from work called or texted. Vanessa's parents sent a card and a check, which she put aside to deal with later. That evening, after Mia was in bed and the kitchen was clean, Nathan and Vanessa bundled up and went for a walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet. Most families already settled in for the night. Christmas lights glowed in windows, and somewhere a few blocks over, someone was playing music. I need to tell you something, Nathan said. Vanessa felt her stomach drop. Those words never led anywhere good. Okay, H-E-O-U. Again. I've been thinking about our conversation, about marriage, about making this official. And? Nathan stopped walking and turned to face her. And I don't want to wait for the right moment or the perfect circumstances. I'm not good at romantic gestures, and I'll probably mess this up, but he pulled a small box from his coat pocket. Will you marry me? Vanessa stared at the box, at Nathan's nervous face, at the quiet street where they were standing. This wasn't a fancy restaurant or a planned proposal. It was just them, on Christmas night, in the neighborhood where they'd built their life together. It was perfect. "Yet," she said. "Obviously, yes." Nathan opened the box, revealing a simple ring, nothing ostentatious, just a single diamond on a gold band. He slid it onto her finger with shaking hands. "Mia helped me pick it out," he admitted. "She said you don't wear flashy jewelry, so we should keep it simple." "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole weird life is perfect." They kissed on the sidewalk while Christmas lights glowed around them. And Vanessa thought about highways and broken cars and sandwiches shared with strangers. About how the worst morning of her life had led to the best night. About how sometimes you had to lose everything to find what actually mattered. When they got home, Mia was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, trying to look like she hadn't been spying. "Did she say yes?" Mia asked Nathan. "She said yes." Mia grinned. "I told you she would." "You knew?" Vanessa asked. "Dad asked if it was okay. Said he wouldn't do it unless I was sure. I said I was sure weeks ago, and he was taking too long." Vanessa knelt down to Mia's level. "Are you really okay with this? With me becoming your stepmom officially?" Mia thought about it seriously. "I think so. You're not trying to replace my real mom, right?" "Never. Your mom will always be your mom. I'm just someone extra who loves you." "Okay, then I'm okay with it." Mia paused. "Can I still call you Vanessa instead of Mom?" "You can call me whatever you're comfortable with." "Good, because I'm not ready for the mom thing yet. Maybe later. Whenever you're ready, or never. It's up to you." Mia hugged her, the first spontaneous hug she'd ever initiated. Vanessa held on tightly, feeling this little girl's acceptance like a gift more valuable than any ring. That night, lying in bed with Nathan, Vanessa looked at the ring on her finger and thought about the future. There would be a wedding to plan, legal papers to file, a whole new set of complications to navigate. But none of that mattered right now. Right now, she was engaged to a man she loved, living in a house that felt like home, with a little girl down the hall who'd just accepted her into the family. Right now, everything was exactly right. Planning a wedding turned out to be significantly more complicated than buying a house. Vanessa wanted something simple and meaningful. Nathan wanted whatever made Vanessa happy. Mia had extremely specific opinions about everything from flowers to cake flavors, and wasn't shy about sharing them. "You can't have roses," Mia announced one Saturday morning while they ate breakfast. "They're boring. Everyone has roses." "What should we have instead?" Vanessa asked, trying to keep a straight face. "Sunflowers. They're scientifically interesting because they follow the sun during the day. That's called heliotropism." "I'm not sure sunflowers are very bridal." "Why not? They're flowers. You're a bride. That's the definition of bridal flowers." Nathan looked up from his coffee. "She's got a point. You're supposed to be on my side," Vanessa said. "I am on your side. I'm just saying the kid makes a compelling argument." But they ended up compromising on wildflowers, which satisfied Mia's requirement for scientific interest while still looking reasonably elegant. The venue took longer to figure out. Vanessa's first instinct was to book something expensive and impressive, but Nathan gently reminded her that half their guest list would be uncomfortable in a place like that. "We need somewhere that feels like us," he said. "Not like we're trying to prove something." They found a botanical garden in Lincoln Park that allowed small weddings. It wasn't fancy, but it was beautiful in an understated way, with paths winding through native plants and a small clearing where they could hold the ceremony. Mia approved because there were interesting specimens to study. Nathan approved because it was affordable. Vanessa approved because for the first time in her life, she was planning something that felt authentic instead of performative. The date got set for late May, which gave them 5 months to prepare. Vanessa threw herself into planning the way she approached everything, with spreadsheets and task lists and a level of organization that bordered on obsessive. Nathan let her, recognizing that this was how she processed anxiety. Mia helped where she could, mostly by offering unsolicited opinions and asking questions about the physics of wedding traditions. "Why do people throw rice?" Mia asked one evening while they addressed invitations. "It's supposed to be lucky," Vanessa said. "Symbol of prosperity or something." "But rice is food." Throwing food is wasteful. Can we throw something else? What did you have in mind? Birdseed. Then at least the birds can eat it. Nathan laughed. Add birdseed to the list. Work continued to be a balancing act. Nathan's pilot program was showing promising results, enough that the board was discussing expanded funding. Vanessa's division was preparing to break ground on the new manufacturing facility, which meant months of meetings with contractors, suppliers, and local government officials. They tried to keep their professional and personal lives separate, but it was getting harder as their careers became more intertwined. The tension came to a head in March during a board meeting where Nathan was presenting his latest findings. Vanessa sat in the back, trying to be unobtrusive, trying not to influence the discussion. Nathan's presentation was solid, clear data, reasonable projections, a compelling case for why Titan Core should invest heavily in his technology. But Richard Morrison, the board chairman, wasn't convinced. These projections assume a level of efficiency we've never achieved before. What makes you confident we can hit these targets? Because the physics supports it, Nathan said calmly. We're not trying to break the laws of thermodynamics. We're just optimizing energy density in ways that haven't been commercialized yet. That's a very expensive optimization. Innovation always is. Morrison turned to Vanessa. Ms. Carter, you've worked with Mr. Reed extensively. What's your assessment of this project's viability? It was a trap. If Vanessa endorsed the project enthusiastically, she'd look biased because of their relationship. If she didn't, she'd be undermining Nathan. Either way, she lost. I'm recused from this discussion, Vanessa said carefully. My personal relationship with Mr. Reed creates a conflict of interest. You should evaluate his project on its technical merit, not on my opinion. Morrison nodded, but his expression suggested he'd made his point. The board voted to continue the pilot program but denied the request for expanded funding. Nathan took it professionally, thanked them for their time, and left the conference room without looking at Vanessa. She found him an hour later in his lab, staring at data on a monitor without really seeing it. I'm sorry, she said. For what? You did the right thing. Recusing yourself was the professional choice. I still feel like I let you down. Nathan finally looked at her. You didn't. Morrison was trying to make me look bad by association. If you'd defended me, it would have worked. This way, the decision was about the technology, not about us. But they still said no. They said not yet. That's different. Nathan leaned back in his chair. Vanessa, I knew what I was getting into when I came back to this industry. I knew it would be slow and frustrating and full of people who don't see what I see. That's fine. I'll prove them wrong eventually. You're not mad at me? Why would I be mad? You handled an impossible situation as well as anyone could. He stood up and kissed her forehead. Go home. I need to finish some things here, but I'll be back by dinner. Vanessa left feeling unsettled. She'd spent her career fighting battles, clearing obstacles, making things happen through sheer determination. But this was a battle she couldn't fight for Nathan, and learning to be okay with that went against every instinct she had. That evening, she talked to Mia while they made dinner together. Nathan was running late, caught up in the lab, which happened more often as his project approached critical milestones. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said, chopping vegetables while Mia set the table. Sure. How do you deal with it when your dad is upset about something and you can't fix it? Mia thought about it seriously. I just stay with him. I can't make the bad things go away, but I can make sure he's not alone. The simplicity of the answer hit Vanessa harder than it should have. Stay with him. Be present. That's what Mia had learned at 8 years old, and somehow Vanessa was still trying to figure it out at 31. That's really smart, Vanessa said. Mom taught me. She said sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is just be there. Nathan came home an hour later looking exhausted. They ate dinner mostly in silence, Mia filling the quiet with stories about school. After Mia went to bed, Nathan and Vanessa sat on the back porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets and watching the empty yard. I'm tired, Nathan said finally. Of the project? A feeling like I have to prove myself constantly. Of watching people dismiss my work because they don't understand it. Of being the guy who used to be brilliant instead of the guy who is brilliant. Vanessa took his hand. You are brilliant. Present tense. Everyone who actually works with you knows that. But it's not enough, is it? The people making decisions don't work with me. They just see numbers and risk assessments and a guy who dropped out of the industry for 3 years. So prove them wrong. Keep doing the work. Eventually the data will speak for itself. Nathan looked at her. Is that what you did when you were building your career? Mostly, though I also got ruthlessly political and stepped on people when I needed to, which I don't recommend. That's comforting. My point is that success takes time. You're comparing yourself to where you were at 28 before everything fell apart. But you're not that person anymore. You're building something different now, and it's going to take longer because you're also being a father and getting married and actually having a life. Maybe I can't have both. Maybe trying to do cutting-edge research while also being present for Mia is just setting myself up to fail at everything. You're not failing at anything. Your research is solid. Mia is thriving. We're getting married in 2 months. None of that is failure. Nathan leaned his head back against the wall. I'm scared. Vanessa. Scared that I'm going to let everyone down. You, Mia, my team. Scared that I came back too soon and I'm not actually ready. Ready for what? For any of this. For being a partner instead of just surviving. For being an engineer instead of just a guy who fixes cars. For being happy when I spent 3 years convinced I'd never be happy again. Vanessa felt her throat get tight. She understood that fear intimately, the fear that happiness was temporary, that success was fragile, that everything good would eventually be taken away. They were both carrying that weight, both afraid to trust that this life they'd built together was real and lasting. I'm scared too, she admitted. Scared that I'm going to revert back to being the person who only cares about work. Scared that I'm going to mess up being a stepmother because I have no idea what I'm doing. Scared that one morning I'm going to wake up and realize I don't actually know how to be in a healthy relationship. So we're both terrified. Apparently. That's romantic. We're both terrified. Vanessa laughed despite herself. We're a disaster, so we really are. Nathan pulled her closer. But we're a disaster together, which is better than being one alone. They sat on the porch until the cold drove them inside, holding each other and acknowledging their fears without trying to fix them. Because sometimes fear was just part of the deal, part of caring about something enough to be scared of losing it. The next few weeks were a blur of wedding preparations and work deadlines. Vanessa's manufacturing facility broke ground, which meant constant site visits and problem solving. Nathan's pilot program hit a critical milestone, proving that his efficiency projections were achievable. The board still didn't approve expanded funding, but Morrison admitted the results were impressive. And through it all, they planned a wedding, chose a menu that accommodated everyone's dietary restrictions, argued about whether they needed assigned seating, compromised on music selections, dealt with family complications when Vanessa's parents announced they might not be able to attend because of a scheduling conflict, which Vanessa pretended didn't hurt, even though it absolutely did. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mia came home from school with a permission slip for a field trip to a science museum. The trip was scheduled for the same day as the wedding rehearsal. I don't have to go, Mia said when she handed Nathan the form. The field trip's not important. Nathan looked at the permission slip, then at his daughter. You've been talking about this museum for months. You said they have a meteorite collection. But the rehearsal, the rehearsal is just practicing. You don't need to practice. You already know what you're doing. Are you sure? I'm sure. Go to the museum. We'll catch you up on anything important. Mia looked relieved. Thanks, Dad. After she left the room, Vanessa said, Are you really okay with her missing the rehearsal? Yeah, the wedding is important to us, but the museum is important to her. She shouldn't have to sacrifice something she loves just to stand around while we practice walking. Most people would say the wedding takes priority. Most people aren't raising a kid alone while trying to remember how to be in a relationship. I have to pick my battles, and this one's not worth fighting. Vanessa thought about that conversation for days afterward, about picking battles, about letting the people you love have their own priorities, about understanding that love didn't mean demanding someone's full attention all the time. The week before the wedding, Vanessa took a day off work to handle final preparations, or that was the plan. In reality, She spent the morning in back-to-back phone calls dealing with a supplier issue at the manufacturing site, completely losing track of time until Nathan texted asking if she was still planning to meet the florist at 2. Vanessa looked at her phone. It was 1:47. She grabbed her coat and ran. The florist meeting went fine, though Vanessa was distracted and kept checking her phone. Afterward, she sat in her car in the parking lot and acknowledged what she'd been avoiding for weeks. She was falling back into old patterns, letting work consume her, prioritizing problems over people. She called Nathan. "Hey," he answered. "Everything okay with the flowers?" "The flowers are fine. I'm not fine." "What's wrong?" "I almost forgot the florist appointment because I was on a work call. And this morning I missed breakfast because I was answering emails. And last night I promised Mia I'd help with her science project, and then I forgot because I was reviewing contracts." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Okay, so what do you want to do about it?" I don't know. I thought I was better at this, at being present, but I'm not. I'm still the person who prioritizes work over everything else." "Vanessa, you're not that person. That person wouldn't notice they were falling back into bad patterns. That person wouldn't care." "But I do care. I care so much it's terrifying. And I'm still screwing it up. Then we fix it, together. Figure out what boundaries you need, what support you need. But beating yourself up doesn't help anyone." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't want to be the person who's too busy for the people she loves. I don't want to look back in 10 years and realize I missed everything important." "Then don't be that person. Starting right now, make different choices. Come home. Have dinner with us. Help Mia with her science project. Be here." "Okay, I'm coming home." That night, Vanessa helped Mia build a model showing how tectonic plates created mountains. It took 3 hours and involved way more paper mache than seemed reasonable, but they finished it together. When Nathan came to check on them, he found them both covered in glue and newspaper, arguing about whether the Himalayas counted as fold mountains or thrust fault mountains. "This is disgusting," Nathan observed. "This is science," Mia corrected. "This is definitely going to stain the table." But he was smiling, and Vanessa realized this was what mattered. Not the perfectly clean house or the efficient use of time. Just being here, being present, being covered in papier-mâché glue, because that's what family looked like. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, sunny and warm, the kind of late May afternoon that made Chicago feel like paradise. Vanessa got ready at the house while Nathan and Mia went to the botanical garden early to help set up. She'd chosen a simple dress, nothing too formal, nothing that screamed billionaire executive getting married, just something that felt like her. Rachel showed up at noon to help with final preparations and provide moral support. "Nervous?" Rachel asked while doing Vanessa's makeup. "Terrified." "Good terrified or bad terrified?" "Good, I think. Like standing at the edge of something huge and not knowing what's on the other side." "That's normal. Marriage is scary." "It's not the marriage part that scares me. It's the being responsible for Mia part. Being a stepmother. What if I'm terrible at it?" Rachel smiled. "Vanessa, I've watched you over the past year. You're already good at it. You just don't realize it yet. I forget things. I get too focused on work. I don't always know what to say when she asks about her mom. And you show up anyway. You try. You love her. That's what matters." They finished getting ready and drove to the botanical garden. The ceremony was small, maybe 50 people, mostly friends from work and a few of Nathan's college buddies. Vanessa's parents had sent regrets, which still stung, but she was trying not to let it ruin the day. David Chen was there with his wife, beaming proudly. The engineers from Nathan's team had come, looking uncomfortable in suits, but genuinely happy. Mia appeared in her blue dress, the same one from the father-daughter dance. She'd insisted on wearing it, saying it was lucky. She was carrying a basket of birdseed, taking her flower girl duties very seriously. "You look pretty," Mia said when she saw Vanessa. "So do you. Are you ready?" "I think so. Are you?" Mia nodded. "Dad's nervous. He keeps checking to make sure he has the rings. That sounds like him. But he's happy too, I can tell. He smiles different now than he used to." Vanessa knelt down to Mia's level, careful not to wrinkle her dress. Thank you for being okay with this, with me becoming part of your family officially. You already were part of it. This just makes it official. Mia paused. Can I tell you something? Of course. I think Mom would have liked you. She always said Dad needed someone who would challenge him and not just agree with everything he said. That's you. Yishatam. Vanessa felt her eyes get wet and had to blink hard to keep her makeup from running. That means everything to me. Don't cry yet. You'll mess up your face, and then the pictures will be weird. The ceremony started at 4. Vanessa walked down the path alone, having decided she didn't need anyone to give her away. She was her own person, making her own choice, and that felt right. Nathan stood at the front looking nervous and happy and slightly overwhelmed. When he saw her, his whole face transformed. Vanessa felt her heart lurch, felt the absolute certainty that this was right, that this man and his daughter were her family now. The officiant kept it short. They'd written their own vows, simple promises that acknowledged the complications of their situation without dwelling on them. I promise to show up, Nathan said, not just physically, but emotionally, to be present in our life together, to prioritize you and Mia, to remember that success means nothing if I'm not sharing it with the people I love. I promise to let you fight your own battles, Vanessa said, getting a laugh from the crowd. To support you without trying to fix everything, to trust that you're capable of solving your own problems. And I promise to keep learning how to be present, how to prioritize what matters, how to build a life that's about more than just achievement. They exchanged rings. Mia handed them over with the solemnity of someone handling nuclear materials. The officiant pronounced them married, and Nathan kissed her while everyone applauded. The reception was casual, catered food, a small dance floor, music that ranged from classic rock to whatever Mia had added to the playlist without asking. Vanessa danced with Nathan, with David Chen, with Mia, with anyone who asked. She talked to colleagues and friends, accepting congratulations and well wishes, feeling lighter than she had in years. Later, after most guests had left, Nathan found her sitting on a bench near the garden's edge. The sun was setting, turning everything golden. Hey, he said, sitting beside her. You okay? More than okay, this was perfect. Even though your parents didn't come? Vanessa had been trying not to think about that. Yeah, even though... Their loss, honestly. Nathan took her hand. For what it's worth, I think they're idiots for missing this. You're pretty incredible. You're biased. Completely. But also right. They sat together watching the sunset, and Vanessa thought about the journey that had led here. The broken car on a frozen highway. The sandwich she'd handed to a stranger. The choice to stay when it would have been easier to walk away. All of it had led to this moment, to this garden, to this person beside her who taught her what love actually looked like. Mia appeared, flopping down on the bench between them. Are we going home soon? I'm tired. Yeah, kiddo. Soon. Can we get ice cream on the way? You just ate cake. Ice cream is different. It's celebration ice cream. Nathan looked at Vanessa. What do you think? Celebration ice cream? I think that sounds perfect. They stopped at a diner on the way home, still in their wedding clothes, eating ice cream while other customers stared at them curiously. Mia got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, same as always. Nathan got vanilla because he was boring. Vanessa tried something called wedding cake flavor because it seemed appropriate. Today was good, Mia said between bites. It was, Nathan agreed. Are things going to be different now that you're married? Vanessa and Nathan exchanged glances. Not really, Vanessa said. We're still us, just more official. Good. I like us how we are. They finished their ice cream and drove home through Chicago streets that felt familiar now, past neighborhoods Vanessa had learned to navigate, toward the house that was actually home instead of just where she kept her things. Nathan carried a sleeping Mia inside while Vanessa got her out of the wedding dress and into pajamas, moving through the routine they'd developed over months of practice. Later, after Mia was settled and the house was quiet, Nathan and Vanessa lay in bed as husband and wife for the first time. We did it, Vanessa said. We did something. Not sure exactly what yet. We became a family. Officially. We were already a family. Today was just paperwork. Important paperwork. Nathan rolled over to face her. Do you ever think about that morning on the highway? How different everything would be if I hadn't stopped. All the time. If you hadn't stopped, if I hadn't given you that sandwich, if either of us had made different choices, none of this would exist. Scary thought. Terrifying. They were quiet for a moment, thinking about all the ways their lives could have gone differently, about how many small choices had led to this moment. I'm glad you stopped, Vanessa said finally. I'm glad you gave me a sandwich. Best turkey and Swiss I ever didn't eat. Oh, Nathan laughed, and they fell asleep tangled together, married and happy, and still slightly terrified of how much they had to lose now. The following Monday, Vanessa went back to work as Vanessa Reed. The name change felt strange at first, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, but she got used to it. Got used to people congratulating her, to the knowing looks from colleagues who'd watched her relationship with Nathan develop, to the sense that her personal and professional lives had finally integrated instead of existing in separate compartments. Nathan's research continued to make progress. 6 months after the wedding, the board finally approved expanded funding. His technology was proving viable, the efficiency gains real and replicable. Morrison even admitted he'd been wrong to doubt the project, which Nathan accepted graciously without pointing out how satisfying vindication felt. Vanessa's manufacturing facility opened the following spring, producing battery systems that were already changing the EV industry. Titancore's market share increased dramatically. The stock price hit record highs. Vanessa got promoted to Chief Technology Officer, overseeing not just her division, but the entire technology strategy for the company. It should have been the culmination of everything she'd worked for. And it was satisfying seeing her vision become reality. But it wasn't the most important thing anymore. That spot belonged to what was waiting at home. Mia turned 10 and decided she wanted to be an aerospace engineer, or possibly a geologist, or maybe both if that was allowed. She was still collecting rocks, still asking impossible questions, still challenging everything Nathan and Vanessa told her. But she was also more confident, more secure. The grief that had shaped her early years was still there, but it wasn't defining her anymore. One evening, almost 2 years after the wedding, Mia came into the living room while Nathan and Vanessa were watching TV. Can I ask you something? She said to Vanessa. Always. Would it be okay if I started calling you Mom sometimes? Not all the time, because my real mom is still my real mom. But sometimes, when it feels right, Vanessa felt her throat close up. She'd never pushed for this, never expected it. Had been content being Vanessa, being the extra parent who loved Mia without trying to replace anyone. That would be okay, she managed to say. Whenever you're ready. I think I'm ready now. I thought about it, and you do all the mom things. You help with homework and drive me places and come to school events. You even know which rocks are igneous and which are metamorphic. That's pretty mom-like. Nathan was watching them with suspiciously bright eyes, not saying anything, letting this moment belong to Vanessa and Mia. I would be honored, Vanessa said, to be your mom, even though I'll probably mess up sometimes. Everyone messes up. That's okay. And just like that, with no ceremony or official declaration, Vanessa became mom. Not exclusively, not replacing Sarah, just taking on the title when it felt natural. It happened gradually. Mia would call her Vanessa most of the time, but occasionally Mom would slip in, usually when asking for help with something or saying goodnight. The first time Mia said, I love you, Mom, without prompting, Vanessa had to excuse herself to cry in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Work continued to evolve. Nathan became Chief Innovation Officer, leading research across multiple divisions. Vanessa and Nathan found themselves in meetings together sometimes, their professional relationship as solid as their personal one. They still kept boundaries, still didn't let their marriage influence business decisions, but they'd learned to navigate the complications. One Saturday afternoon, 3 years after that first morning on the highway, Nathan loaded everyone into his truck, still the same rusty beast, though he'd finally fixed the tailgate and drove them back to Interstate 90. They parked on the shoulder roughly where Vanessa's BMW had died all those years ago. Why are we here? Mia asked, looking around at the unremarkable stretch of highway. This is where I met Vanessa, Nathan explained. Her car broke down right here. I stopped to help. And that's how you fell in love? Not exactly, but it's how everything started. They stood on the shoulder while traffic screamed past, looking at the spot that had changed all their lives. It wasn't romantic or special, just concrete and asphalt and exhaust fumes, but it was where two lonely people had found each other by accident. It's not very impressive, Mia observed. Nathan laughed. No, it's really not. But it's important anyway. Yeah, kiddo. It's important anyway, Saket. They took a photo there, all three of them standing on the shoulder, Mia in the middle, the highway behind them. It would go in the album with all their other photos, just another moment in the life they'd built together. On the drive home, Mia fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from a morning at the Science Museum. Nathan and Vanessa rode in comfortable silence, the way they'd learned to exist together over the years. Do you ever miss it, Marcel? Vanessa asked. Your old life, before everything changed? Nathan thought about it. Sometimes I miss Sarah, miss having her here to see Mia grow up. But the life I had then? No. I was so focused on work that I missed what mattered. I don't want to go back to that. Me neither. I keep thinking about who I was before we met. That woman was successful but so lonely. She had everything except the things that actually mattered. And now? Now I have everything that actually matters. The rest is just bonus. They arrived home to find a package on the porch, a delivery Mia had been waiting for. Inside was a book about meteorites and a small sample kit with actual fragments from space. Mia woke up immediately when she saw it, all exhaustion forgotten, and spent the next hour examining each specimen with scientific intensity. This is from the Canyon Diablo meteorite, she read from the documentation. Estimated to be 4 billion years old. That means this rock existed before Earth had oceans. That's older than your dad, Vanessa said. Significantly older, Nathan agreed. Everything's older than you, Dad. You're just regular old. Thanks, kiddo. Very supportive. They spent the evening as they usually did. Homework help, dinner preparation, the constant negotiations of family life. Nathan made pasta from scratch because they'd all gotten good at it. Vanessa helped Mia with a social studies project about electoral colleges, which required patience neither of them naturally possessed. They argued about whether pineapple on pizza was acceptable, a debate that had been ongoing for 3 years with no resolution in sight. Later, after Mia was asleep, Nathan and Vanessa sat in the backyard watching stars appear in the Chicago sky. The city lights made them hard to see, but they were there if you knew where to look. I've been thinking, Nathan said. Dangerous. About that day on the highway, about how many things had to go exactly right for us to end up here. If my truck had been 5 minutes later, if you'd already called a tow truck, if either of us had made different choices, but we didn't. We made exactly the choices we made. I know, but it makes me think about how fragile this all is, how easily it could have never happened. Vanessa took his hand. It's not fragile anymore. We built something solid, something that can survive bad days and work stress and all the normal complications of life. You think? I know, because we've already survived all of that. Multiple times. And we're still here. They sat together under the stars, thinking about highways and broken cars and sandwiches shared with strangers, about how the worst moments could lead to the best outcomes if you were brave enough to accept help when you needed it and give help without expecting anything in return, about how success wasn't measured in money or position or power, but in moments like this. Quiet evenings with the person you loved, knowing your daughter was asleep upstairs, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges and you'd face them together. About how the best things in life often came from the places you least expected, from the people you almost missed, from the small acts of kindness that changed everything. Inside the house, Mia stirred in her sleep, probably dreaming about meteorites or distant planets or whatever cosmic wonders currently occupied her imagination. Doctor. Trunk stood guard on the nightstand, worn from years of love but still doing his job. On the dresser sat photos of Sarah, kept safe and honored, part of the family even in absence. This was what mattered. Not the perfect life or the flawless execution, just the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of 3 people who'd found each other and chosen to build something together. Who'd learned that love wasn't about having everything figured out, but about showing up for each other even when, especially when, nothing made sense. Vanessa looked at the ring on her finger catching starlight and thought about that morning 3 years ago when her car had died and a stranger had stopped to help. She'd thought he was saving her career. Turns out, he'd been saving something much more important. He'd been saving her life, and she'd saved his. And together, they'd saved Mia's, not in some dramatic, heroic way, just in the slow accumulation of ordinary days, in showing up and being present and choosing love over loneliness, connection over isolation, family over achievement, in learning that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a sandwich given without expectation, a car fixed by a stranger, a moment of grace on a frozen highway, could change absolutely everything. And in the end, that was the only thing worth remembering, not the success or the money or the impressive careers. Just the simple truth that they'd found each other when they both needed finding. And they'd built something worth keeping, something real, something lasting, something that started with a breakdown on Interstate 90 and became a life worth living.